Hello and welcome to Rookie Me Central's AFL Draft Night 2. We'll be going live the whole night. I'm Chief Editor Peter Williams, and co-hosting with me tonight, of course, is Grace McRae again. Grace, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And so we're going to throw through to the draft room throughout the whole night, running from pick 21 through till whenever the last one is. Obviously, we know it can go all the way through till the 70s or potentially beyond, but more than likely in the 60s. So I'll just say, introduce the draft room, starting with draft editor Michael Alvaro. Michael, how are you going?
Very good, thanks, Pete. Yeah, pretty pumped after last night. Haven't expended all the energy. Excuse me, maybe I have. But yeah, ready to go and just to get stuck into the rest of the night's action.
And we'll do with pick number 21.
Prospects left on the board. I mean, they could go local with Matty Johnson, who a lot of us really expected to go in that top 15 range, and it's kind of slid past. I mean, if you have him and Erasmus as your tall midfielders going forward, I mean, you've got a lot of quality there. You've got Josh Goder as another one who could play a range of roles, who originally come from WA. So, yeah, there's plenty left on the board, but if I was to hazard a guess, I think Johnson and Goder would have to be the main ones, or even a Jesse Motlop, who could have been in there as an academy bid if he went past 40, but yeah, we'll see.
And whereabouts do you think Matt Johnston will go?
Yeah, I think Ed summed it up pretty well. He'll probably end up going to Fremantle. You think if they take that pick, it's the logical choice being a local lad and someone that fits their list profile, you'd say. If not, you can't imagine he gets much further. Maybe North Melbourne take him, or maybe someone give a pretty attractive offer to get him on the list with that pick.
I'd put Richmond up there as well. They've got 3 picks in the 20s there towards the end. That could be an option or us. Might even slide into the 30s, see how we go there.
It was discussed with Hawthorn as well. They may have been choosing between Ward and Johnson. So if he does get to one of Hawthorn's 2 picks in the 20s, that could be another option.
Absolutely. If you have a look at the next 10, obviously, as you alluded to, we've got Freo with pick 21. Then you've got North. And then after that, there's basically, aside from a pick for Carlton later on, you pretty much got 3 clubs dominating the 20s in Hawthorn, Geelong and Richmond. What do you sort of think will happen in terms of those picks, and which way do you think maybe those 3 clubs will go? Will they pick similar players or different needs or best available or perhaps live trade? How do you sort of see the next 10 picks sort of going?
I think Geelong's the club that probably picks best available more than the others. So Richmond probably have a few specific needs that they're going to look to, but Geelong can pick up pretty much anything and get good value out of it. We know that they like local picks as well. So the likes of Toby, Conway, Mitch Nevitt still on the board. They're 2 pretty high-end talents that'll serve Geelong well. I think they're just looking for that real instant regeneration. They probably do need a pure ruck, and Toby Conway's exactly that. Mitch Nevitt, a bit of midfield depth long term. So they're probably a few options there. Hawthorn we've spoken about a little bit, that midfield class they got with Josh Ward, but do they look to key position stocks? And then Richmond, I mean, what do you guys reckon?
With Mitch Owens will come in.
Yeah, I think around the range, we know that he was getting some interest in the top 20 with a few clubs definitely considering him with their selection. So I wouldn't imagine much further than 25 if got to that point. I think anything outside of the top 30 would be, you wouldn't think that would happen, would you?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think Carlton's like just the bidding machine, and they're pretty close. They're at 27. Josh Fay's there as well to bid on. So, yeah, there could be a little bit of action within the 20s, you'd say.
Perfect. So we were lucky enough, obviously, to speak with Mitch Owens throughout the week. Michael, you spoke to him. We've got a bit of a clip, a bit of an interview with the St Kilda Next Generation Academy. Obviously, we weren't sure whether he was going to get a bid in the top 20. There were some nerves from Saints fans, but we know now that he'll at least have the opportunity to be matched by St Kilda, which we believe will happen. But we did chat to him during the week, so we're going to throw to an interview now before it gets underway.
Hello and welcome to the Rookie Me Central YouTube channel. I'm your host, Michael Alvaro. Today we have a special treat. Mitch Owens is here from the Sandringham Dragons. How are you today, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
very good. We're going to be running through a few questions from Saints fans, of course, a next generation academy prospect here with us today. So we've got plenty of queries from them and otherwise as well. Mitch has had a pretty cool journey up until now, but I guess you're only a couple days away from the draft. So how are the nerves? What's the feeling like at the moment?
Yeah, pretty excited at the moment, and yeah, obviously a few nerves there as well.
Yeah, and Saints fans are pretty keen to know, obviously coming through the program there, are you excited at the prospect of landing, I guess, at St Kilda?
Yeah, definitely. Just being part of the NGA for the last 3 or 4 years will definitely be, unreal to land there. So yeah, definitely excited.
Would you be disappointed in a sense if it happened or if it turned out otherwise?
I wouldn't be disappointed. I guess I prefer to be Saints, but whatever happens, I'll still be really happy and excited.
Yeah, and what's it been like sort of getting a bit of interest from other clubs as well? Has that been profound, do you think, or you're still pretty certain that you'll end up in, what colours are the Saints? Red, black and white?
I guess nothing's really certain at the moment. Just got to wait and see, I guess. Yeah.
And some good talent, obviously, with you in that academy. Marcus Winhager's got a bit of attention. You've had Josiah Kyle, Jack Paris as well, another teammate of yours. What's it been like coming up with them throughout the journey?
Yeah, it's been really good, I guess. Just being able to train with those type of boys, and also a few of those boys as the Dragons. It's been a really good experience.
Yeah. And what club do you support?
North Melbourne.
North Melbourne.
Yeah.
That's interesting. How do you think they're going to go at the draft?
I guess I've got the number 1 pick, so I think whoever they get, that will be a pretty good player.
Who would you take?
I'd probably take Dacos, but he was going to Pie, so I guess Horn will be the next option.
Absolutely. And tell us a little bit about your eligibility for NGA status. Obviously, you've got a parent born overseas, is that right?
Yep. So mum's born in Japan, so that's why I'm able to be in the Saints NGA.
Yeah, awesome. I guess you'd be happy to be there as well. It's good to have a little bit of certainty heading into draft day. In terms of your on-field, you've obviously grown a lot, developed a lot over the last year. You didn't make the Sandy program last year. So tell me a little bit about your journey and how it's been for you sort of, I guess, riding the wave of that.
Yeah, I guess at the end of 16s, got cut from Dragons. Just, I guess my training effort was pretty low and, it just wasn't there. And, I guess after that I was able to grow a fair bit and, just train hard, work hard and, I was able to come back, I guess, maybe a year ago now.
Yeah, and you say grow, it's actual literal growth as well.
Yeah.
You've sort of grown 15 centimetres or so from when you're an under 16. So with that, how's your game changed? How, in terms of position, role, things like that? Yeah,
definitely changed a fair bit from going, I guess a small type of midfielder, even a bit of a small forward type of player, to now, I guess, being that tall midfielder, even playing wing forward. And definitely changed.
Well, where are you going to fit in? Where do you think you're going to play once you hit the elite level?
I think I play my best footy in the inside, but like I said, I can play outside or forwards, just whatever the team needs.
Yeah. What are your best strengths? What do you think you're going to offer at the next level to the Saints or any other club?
Say my athleticism and also my marking is probably my 2 main strengths.
Yeah. And in terms of improvements, what are the sort of things that clubs have maybe come back to you with that you're still looking to work on?
Yeah, I guess the main feedback I get from clubs is probably my kicking and composure.
Yeah. And, I mean, working on that would probably be a little difficult over the last couple of years. So how have you kept motivated? How have you kept fit? And what sort of things you've been doing with mates to, I guess, keep on top of things?
Yeah, definitely. It's been tough. And, I guess during lockdown, either before or after school, just, going for a kick and run with my mates and, doing a gym session, even during lunch times or after school with my brother. So, it's been good.
Yeah. And you finished school now, so how'd you go with all that? You're a pretty studious kid, or are you just happy to get it out of the way?
Happy to get it out the way, I reckon.
Yeah. Are you looking to do anything next year?
I think I'll do uni, but not too sure what that is going to be yet. So I'll
wait on the results, see how you go.
Yeah, pretty much.
You took your Vic Metro opportunity with aplomb this year. Obviously, got the late call up, and we're probably out to prove a few people wrong. You did that. So, what was the feeling like afterwards?
Yeah, it was a really good feeling, just being able to play a good game and, definitely probably one of the highest standards. And I guess I was pretty happy, prove, recruiters and whoever picked the team wrong and, just show them that I should have been in the team.
Yeah, and there was plenty of talent in the field. Obviously, you guys had a pretty big win. So tell me, I guess, both players that you played with and against, who were the standouts there for you?
Yeah, there was some unreal players playing that day. So I guess Nick Dacos, Sam Darcy, and some players I played against was like Ben Hobbs, Rochelle, all those types of players. Yeah.
And your direct opponent on the day, who'd you have?
Not too sure. I guess I was kind of rotating in the wing forward. So yeah, there would have been a few.
Yeah, Campbell Chesser probably one of your teammates. Did
Yeah,
you feel
I
like you
think
beat him on the day?
Well, I didn't really play on him much, maybe for a couple of minutes, but.
Hello and welcome back to another night of AFL Draft. We just heard from Mitch Owens there. He spoke about, the hopes of landing at St Kilda. We thought leading up to this point that he may not. We know GWS were keen. They ended up going with Lecker instead. And of course, we knew there were a couple other clubs that might have been interested. But in the end, he's made it through the 20. So St Kilda fans should be relatively comfortable with that. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up. So it is pretty exciting at the moment. Fremantle are on the clock. I know we sort of asked you guys before, but who do you think they might select with this pick?
Yeah, I think we're going to lock in Matt Johnson. Been 20 seconds, so they're just deliberating a little bit here, the Dockers. But they did say they were going to stick with the pick as well instead of trading it. Would have taken a heck of a trade to get it off their hands. So I think the West Australian boy is going to be who they go with. They were perhaps going to go with him as high as 8 or 10. So, it makes sense. Add a bit of class to that midfield. Obviously lost it a little bit with Adam Chera going to Carlton. So makes sense, I think, in all of our eyes.
Absolutely. So obviously Fremantle are on the clock now. So very exciting times. We know that it's going to be quicker than last night. We know the first night there's about 5 minutes between picks. That's going to be pretty, sped up this night. We know that a lot of clubs will be coming for that pick 21, whether or not there was a trade made, but it doesn't look like they'll go ahead. They do have a maximum of 5 minutes still, but it's not as enforced as it is on night one. So, because if we had 50 odd picks for 5 minutes, I don't need to tell you how long that would go for. So, at the moment, we're just waiting on that pick. So I thought I'd take the time to just chat with Grace briefly, just to tell the audience a bit about your football journey, coming through Gippsland Power and then Vic Country.
Yeah, sweet. So I started at Gippsland Power maybe 2-3 years ago. Then made it last year into playing Vic Country for the under-19s. And we obviously were undefeated, so it was an absolute honour to play alongside with them. And then I've currently in the VFLW program with Hawthorn.
Perfect. And obviously you came through that program with a lot of Vic Country players who ended up getting drafted. So who were some of the ones that you enjoyed playing with and that you thought were among the better players?
Annie Lee, absolutely awesome. She played perfect every single game. Ella Friend, so good in the air. Just watching her as a teammate just fly up, it was absolutely awesome.
Perfect. And we do actually have the first pick in the draft for the second night, and as predicted, it is Matthew Johnson. Out of that WA program, Subiaco, a real talent. Midfield was a bit of a surprise to last until there. There was a rumours he might have gone as high as 10. Fremantle have got a real bargain there, boys. Obviously, they could have taken him with 10. Maybe they got a rumour that he was going to last, and they've got him anyway. So I reckon Dockers fans are going to be thrilled with that. What do you think?
Yeah, Dockers recruiters would be pretty thrilled as well. Can see on the Fox Footy telecast they've got him. His comparison is Adam Chera, so it's pretty funny and fitting, I guess, for Fremantle that they get that direct replacement. Ed, I know you sort of rate him pretty highly. What do you think he adds to the Fremantle midfield?
Yeah, I think we touched on yesterday as well how they only had 2 players over 190 centimetres under 22, and they've just added 3 with their first 3 picks over 190 centimetres. So obviously they definitely wanted to get their list balance right, and it just so happens that those players are pretty much right around where you'd want to pick them and of areas of need as well. So, Fremantle done awesome out of this draft, and you've got to be happy with Johnson as a really skillful midfielder who rarely misses target by hand and foot. Pretty good athlete as well. So, plenty for Freo fans to be excited about.
And obviously we know the Dockers, they've gone local for all their selections so far. You've got Amos, you've got Erasmus, now you've got Johnson. You're sort of building a real core there. Their next pick isn't until 53, so they've got a bit of a weight. Do you sort of anticipate what they might need if they pick up another player, who they might go for in terms of a need?
Well, they could always still trade up from here. As we know, they have Jesse Motlop in the academy, and I think that they do have a need for that sort of genuine crumbing forward that can apply a bit of defensive pressure as well. So that wouldn't be a shock to see. I know. I think if they keep that pick, it'll end up being used on matching an Eric Benning bid, maybe.
Yeah, could do. If not, if they can get a small forward, we know that there are plenty of good West Australian small forwards. Jamal Stretch, Caden Harbour, that'd be good late options. And there are a few Vicks out there as well, but we'll see if they're still on the board.
North Melbourne are on the board here. Who do you think they might end up selecting?
For me, probably a small forward as well. So Sam Butler or Jesse Motlop. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, those are two that could be in the mix. You couldn't rule out Judson Clark as well as the Dandenong Stingrays player. He's a very good player. And if they don't go small, I mean, they might need some tools as well. Maybe a Rhett Bazzo. Maybe they go early on a Charlie Dean as well. So there's just heaps of different options. They may even go best available. I mean, if you want to get as much good talent through the door, then they might just do that.
And they've got a couple more picks sort of in a pretty close range as well. So 34, 37 as it stands. Yeah. See what sort of options they look for there. They could get a good sort of variety.
Do you think North Melbourne will trade in any of their picks?
They have traded up already, so it's always an option. Maybe they were trying to get a better hand so that they could get in maybe consecutive picks in the 20s here. I think it depends on who's left on their talent order and where. They might see a Josh Goder as an athletic midfielder, or half-back with midfield potential, and think that he's not really a need, but he's best available, but they do want to get a need in a tall or a small forward.
So potentially Richmond obviously have those 3 picks at 28, 29 and 30 at the moment. We do know there are great players on the board such as Tyler Sonsie, and Hawthorn have the next selection at pick 23. He played for the Hawks VFL team. Could Richmond potentially put a deal to North Melbourne to get ahead of Hawthorn if North were not after Sonsie in this example?
I think they definitely could, but even more pressing is the fact that we've got a pick in. So we might throw back to you in just a sec.
Yes, we do. And we've got Josh Goder out of the Calder Cannons, who is, another athletic player who's sort of played off half-back and can play through the mid. What do you sort of think, Grace?
Yeah, he's obviously got awesome speed. His marking is excellent. Clean hands and versatility, which is 100% what any midfielder needs.
Perfect. So I know, Ed, you're a big fan of Goder's, so give us a bit of a rundown into what he might offer to North Melbourne.
Yeah, and I mean, he'd be absolutely stoked that he's gone to the club that he supports as well. I mean, he's a North Melbourne supporter, and he adds plenty of talent. I mean, I have him in the top 10 of my draft board as a versatile midfielder. He can play half-back, he can play half-forward, or even on a wing. There's so much untapped potential there, and he's just one of those players that could end up being a real steal at this range if he really lives up to his billing. And I mean, Declan as well, I think you really like him as well. What are the things that you've liked as well?
Yeah, I'm a big fan that he can just add something to every line that he plays. And we speak about athleticism and the big part that he's playing in the current game. I think Goder's probably as good as he can get in that regard. He's got a lot of untapped potential, as you say, Ed. Obviously, hasn't played a whole lot of midfield, but has looked really promising in the performances that he has played, especially in the Vic Metro versus Vic Country trial games, which we were all at. I felt that was probably his best performance to date, and really excited to see him try and replicate that at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we spoke about it before that Hawthorn, who are now up, had that potential interest in Sonsie. There's still a number of others that. Is there a need perhaps they could get? Will they go tall with Bazzo? How do you sort of see it?
Like North Melbourne did, I'd probably just go best available. To be honest, Tyler Sonsie is probably that. We know he's got the link. He played his VFL debut with Box Hill, 24 disposals, 2 goals. He's all class. He's dual-footed. We talked about Josh Ward having a bit of a similar game to Sam Mitchell. Well, that's one trait that Sam Mitchell also had. So, if he has a type, then Tyler Sonsie might be it. He probably, has to improve his work rate and things like that. His defensive running, his gut running. But if we're looking at the upside and the things that he can do, he's a remarkable talent and one who is touted as a top 10 potential. So they're going to get a steal, you'd think, at 23, or if they even see him sliding down to 26. How far do you think he could go down, Ed?
I wouldn't have thought too much longer. I mean, there's a lot of clubs, even Richmond a bit later on, that could really look at him. I mean, if we're thinking of what the Hawks could pick now as well, they may want to add to their forward line stocks. I mean, get a bit more excitement in there. I mean, you got the likes of Sam Butler, who could definitely be used there, Jesse Motlop, even a Blake Howes as a high half forward, Judson Clark. I mean, they're in a really good spot, Hawthorn, to take two really good players.
Think about Sam Butler and Jesse Motlop.
Yeah, both phenomenal players, and we've touched on them a little bit. I think the thing that they have in common, and maybe you'd say they're maybe the best two forwards at least left on the board in the class, probably the defensive pressure within the forward 50. I feel that's a real strong suit for both of them, and we've seen, Richmond and Essendon recently have made that sort of pressure forward line a real in vogue thing. So, yeah, I think that they're both really good options around here.
And it's something that those two do differently to Josh O'Shalley. So he was the premier small forward in this draft crop, and rightly so. He's a massive, just a flair player, a player who brings great excitement to the game. And, Butler and Motlop have that too, but they also have the defensive side, and both have played through midfield as well. So, in themselves, they're two really valuable selections potentially.
Do you think Geelong will go any local picks?
Yeah, I think we spoke about that a little bit before as well. Nevitt and Conway would be right in the mix. I think we do have a pick though, so we might throw back to you quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So with pick 23, Hawthorn have pulled the trigger on Sam Butler of the GWV Rebels. Obviously, the Rebels have done really, really well this draft. They've already had Lohman and Gibcus and Hobbs. So this is their fourth within 23. This is one of their better ones.
Yeah, right on. He's a gun. Sam Butler, obviously, has had a great season. A little bit of an injury in between there, but I think he got to show his form, midfielder forward. Has sort of really developed his craft. So he's got clean hands. We know he's quick and has all the smarts. So see how he develops.
I think, Sam Butler, and as you mentioned, it was good to see him roll through the midfield and the forward line. How do you think he would have gone in that country setup? Would he have played more midfield, or you reckon he would have been more of a stationary forward?
I think coming off the injury, particularly at that time, he probably would have played more forward. So we know he's got those smarts, as we said. He's pretty clever and skillful. So probably would have been able to show that in the Vic Country setup. And you can imagine him along guys like Judson Clark. They had Connor McDonald in the midfield who could also go forward. So would have been a pretty handy addition because they did get beat comprehensively, you thought, in the midfield in that game. So, it would have been a handy addition.
And I think, one thing that he might have on other small forwards that do roll through the midfield, I feel, is if Sam's strength within the midfield is his contested game, if anything, and you do generally see those smaller types and those more, as you say, flair players from the forward line, they tend to stick more to the outside. So do you think that holds him in good stead to become a full-time midfielder?
Yeah, he's got such clean hands. So I think his mix of traits really suit the inside game well. So he's got those clean hands where he can collect the ball, he's strong enough, but then he can also explode away and make pretty good decisions. You'd probably sort of want to see him back himself as well to use his kicking more, right, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, that athleticism as well that he's got with that speed and agility and his endurance, I mean, he'll want the ball in his hands as much as possible. And although his kicking at times has been a little bit iffy, going inside 50, he's usually very safe with it. But he's very creative by hand. I mean, when he gets the ball cleanly by hand and he can shoot it out, he's very damaging in that regard. And that's definitely where you could see where his midfield talent comes to the fore. So I still prefer him more as a forward. And I think that's kind of what Hawks probably need more if they've got Josh Ward already going for the midfield. Butler just adds a bit of clean and a bit of class to that half-forward line.
But in the same vein, even if he is pinch hitting through midfield, that's a really handy point of difference to have because of the sort of crop that they currently do have. Guys like Warpool, Amira, Mitchell, they're not exactly those explosive burst types. Whereas Butler, Wingard, they can sort of really get that engine room running, with a bit of pace and just an injection of flair. So for the Hawks, a really exciting addition and one that, has that upside They could use him in a variety of ways, but whether it be the sort of the Brewster replacement or just that potential midfielder down the line, I think he does a lot at this selection. Obviously, the brother of Dan as well. What sort of similar traits do you think he has? We've spoken a lot about them already, but what does he do differently?
I think that natural forward craft is something that they share pretty well. They both know where the goals are and they're both opportunistic when they have to be. But, Sam's midfield potential, you have to say, is higher. And I think if you're a betting man, you might end up saying that Sam plays more permanent midfield than you see Dan. But they're both exceptional players, and you can see that talent runs in the family. And at the GWV Rebels as well, they've had a few picked up early on here.
Yeah, absolutely. What a first round they've had.
Do you think Geelong will go needs or best available for their next pick?
Well, we might find it out soon, but I think they've gone needs.
All right, pick 24 from Geelong is Toby Conway from Geelong Falcons.
Obviously, a ruck, guys. We wondered if they'd go. It was sort of touted he might. Geelong fans are a bit mixed whether they need a ruck. Do you think they need a ruck, or how do you sort of see him fitting in to the Geelong Cats, I should say, program coming out of the Falcons?
Yeah, certainly did need a ruck. I think they just need a permanent ruck they can rely on. They've rotated so many sort of throughout the last few years. It's one area of the field where they just haven't had the consistency, the reliability that perhaps they've needed. But Conway is a pure ruckman. He doesn't have, the sort of other strings to his bow like, a Reece Stanley or a Sava Radicalaire. So he's going to be able to just sort of slot into that ruck role. Plug and play. His craft is really good there. He can mark contested balls around the ground, and it'll give that side a little bit more stability going forward. Probably a needs-based sort of selection there, and a local boy, no less.
Absolutely. So do you think they might go with another local boy in Mitch Nevitt here, or do you think they're going to potentially go at Tyler Sonsie and spoil the party, or perhaps, a Jesse Motlop? How do you sort of see this sort of panning out the next pick?
Yeah, well, they've already got their guy in Conway as a tall, but they could just go best available here. I mean, they've got 2 top 25 picks. Probably just pick the best player on your board at this point, and it looks like we've got the pick in as well.
And it is Mitch Nevitt from the Geelong Falcons. That they have gone all local here. So, guys, what do you think about Mitch Nevitt as that pick to pair up with Toby Conway?
Yeah, I mean, you got a ruckman, you need a mid to sort of palm it down to. So Mitch Nevitt's one with great range at the stoppages. He's got long arms. He's a big-bodied mid and great athleticism as well, Declan. So adds a little bit or good bit of depth to that midfield group.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got a pretty good explosive midfielder in that current crop already that's aging. So, the perfect, I guess, mentor or role model for Nevitt to come in and work closely with in Dangerfield, who they'd be hoping that he can replicate.
Yeah.
Again, we've got Hawthorn coming up, and then we've got Carlton up for their first pick. We have spoken a bit about Hawthorn. I guess Michael is the Carlton fan in the room. Who would you like to see get through to Carlton?
Yeah, there's a lot of talent on the board still left. Top of my head, I really like Judson Clark and Connor McDonald. They're two that probably suit Carlton's needs. We're after a bit of running power, a bit of around the square running power. So those two are sort of mid-forwards who are quite different between each other. They still offer, I guess, the same sort of value to the Blues that will help bring them forward in that kind of rotation. I think Judson Clark, for me, would be the one I'd choose just for his skill. That ball use going forward is a little bit like Zach Fisher. I know that's a comparison, Ed, that you went with throughout the year. Connor McDonald, more of a clearance winner, works really hard around the ground, good work rate. So whichever one it is, they both offer something a little different, but I think both of those would be perfect additions for Carlton.
So Richmond have currently got Josh Gibcus and Tom Brown. They have the next 3 picks coming up. Who do you think they will be looking for?
You'd have to say midfielders at this point. I think they've got their, tall defender in Gibcus and Tom Brown, who could be a midfielder, but you're probably thinking more outside of the square type of player. So, some inside bulls. Connor McDonald might be one that they look at. I mean, if Sonzi slid that far, you'd think that he'd be a pretty easy one to lock in, given his clearance proficiency and how important clearances are now in the game. They sort of need to improve in that regard, I believe.
Absolutely. So we're still just waiting on Hawthorn's pick. To recap Hawthorn, obviously they just recently picked up Sam Butler and last night they went with Josh Ward. They've gone with the mid, they've gone for a mid forward. Do you think they're going to go for Sonzi and go for that extra mid, or do you think Hawthorn are going to perhaps go for a tall in Rhett Bazzo? Where do you sort of see it happening?
Yeah, I would say those two would probably be one of the favourites to go. They may even go Blake Howes as more of a taller type of midfielder. Well, not more as a midfielder, but more of a wingman. But he can go across half forward. He may even be a halfback. Who knows? He's got a lot of development left in him. But with Sonzi as well, with that link through Box Hill, he played a ripping game with 24 disposals and 2 goals. I mean, he didn't look out of place. So he would be one that would, I mean, you look at Butler and you look at Ward and you look at the young midfield that they could have from now on. I mean, they've got the inside guys and now they've got more of the class if they can get those players through the door for sure.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting sort of draft coming up, no doubt. So just to recap what we've had so far, Matthew Johnson, probably the biggest shock, if you like, not making it through night one, much like Devon Robinson a couple of years back. Matthew Johnson has done that with making through to Fremantle. Then North Melbourne picked up Josh Goda. Hawthorn went with Sam Butler. Geelong went with Toby Conway and Mitch Nevitt. And now Hawthorn have selected Tyler Sonzi, as we sort of predicted pre-draft. Grace, tell us a bit about Tyler.
Yeah, so Tyler's obviously really effective on the scoreboard. He's got great clean hands, and with that obviously going well with the scoreboard, he's doing great with his kicking. What do you guys think?
I think we might have gone a bit early with that selection there. We're not seeing anything being selected, but if it is Tyler Sonzi, that's fantastic clarity from you two.
Just double check that. Some info coming through. Someone obviously tweeted the wrong thing, but if it is Tyler Sonzi, that would be a very great thing for Hawthorn. Obviously, we do suspect they're going to be looking long and hard with him. Guys, we've got one question on Facebook. I might throw to Ed, given I know you're a fan of this player. Northern Knights Ned Long. Who do you think might take him somewhere in the draft?
I mean, there'd be a lot of clubs that would look at a taller midfielder. I mean, he's 195 centimetres. Maybe it's an Essendon later in the draft, but it looks like the pick's finally in. We might be able to check who it is.
And we do actually have the pick in. So it's Connor McDonald out of the Dandenong Stingrays. A similar type to Hawthorn. Now, what's interesting is we do know he was linked to Carlton pre-draft, and he's someone who, has a lot of interesting traits, someone who, has that speed through the midfield. He can play other positions. Guys, what do you sort of think about this selection here?
Excellent selection, I think. Connor's been really consistent in the NAB League games that he has been able to play. Obviously, plays for Haileybury in the APS when he's not with Dandenong Stingrays. And I think that he was one that maybe went a little bit under the radar in the Metro versus Country game. But, I think he ended up with the same amount of touches as Ben Hobbs and plays in a similar sense. So I guess with his clearance proficiency and his inside work, he's probably got a little bit more speed as well than Hobbs. So Hawthorn might like that and might, see him as that explosive midfielder that they need.
Could also be a high half forward that they look for as well. Obviously, that sort of forward pressure, that surge mentality, that sort of game. Connor McDonald's got the speed, he's got the work rate to sort of play that kind of role. So whether his future lies in the midfield or he starts up forward, we'll see. So he's about 185 centimetres, which is surprising given sort of how he looked as an under 16. He was a bit more fleet of foot, a bit more outside, like a sort of forward or wingman. So he's really developed his game in a different way, and it's going to be exciting for the Hawks to see how they choose to develop him.
And who do you think Carlton will target now that Connor McDonald's currently gone?
I think the pick is in, so give it a couple seconds and I'll tell you.
Now, he's a small forward out of South Fremantle, someone who is, quite exciting, got some great attributes, coming out of WA. He's someone who we touted would go in this sort of range, someone who we think that might be able to contribute up forward. We know Carlton need a small forward. Guys, what do you sort of think about that selection?
Yeah, well, it's been sort of linked, I guess, not through any inside word, but from a long way out, just because of the need. And I think it's a very good selection from Carlton. Jesse obviously playing for South Fremantle, who made the Waffle Grand Final and doing well earlier on in the season as well. I think he averaged that touch over a goal a game, so he's effective at hitting the scoreboard. But as we've said at various points tonight, his real strength is that defensive work and just his forward craft as he hits front and centres and he crumbs really aggressively.
Yeah, a perfect sort of selection or needs-based selection for Carlton, I'd say. So just getting that pure goal-kicking small forward in who adds that forward pressure as well. Like, he is a genuine small forward. That's the role he was playing at league level, and he hit the scoreboard consistently. That's all you can ask for. And then all the other stuff, the defensive pressure, all the effort, I guess the flair he brings and the confidence he has. It's pretty exciting. I think Carlton fans will really like him. So I do. I'm a Carlton fan. So happy days.
And when do you think the Josh Fahey bid will come in?
Yeah, this might be one for Declan as well.
Hopefully not for a long while yet. I know Richmond have been linked pretty heavily at various points this year, so I'd expect in sort of the next 3 picks. Obviously, as a Giants fan, I'd be happy if he got past that, but at this point in the draft, I think it's hard to overlook what he does bring in comparison to other players. Not that anyone's bad, but he has a lot of some just particular strengths out of the half-back line.
And we talk about like bidding for the sake of it. Carlton might have done that because I don't think they particularly need a player like Josh Fahey. They've opted against it. Richmond might need a player like Josh Fahey, so this is where a bid would make sense, and you'd think that they'd make it at their first selection of the 3, so that could be one that they go with. Otherwise, surely one of the sides after that, West Coast, could do with a Josh Fahey, so it would make sense he comes in the next few picks.
And what do you think about Mitch Owens?
Yeah, same thing. Needs base, I think Carlton could have potentially placed a bid. Richmond might look for that as well. We know he's going to end up at St Kilda anyway, so I'd say probably anywhere between now and pick 35-ish would make sense. So we'll see how he goes. I think his future's pretty certain anyway, but we could see his name called out pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we've sort of gone through. There's been a couple of WAs, mostly sort of Vic Country, and then of course Josh Goda for Calder Cannons. Guys, who do you sort of see as the best available prospect that's left on the board?
Yeah, I think all of us would say Sonzi, right?
Yep.
Yeah, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, Sonzi's just a very classy player. I mean, he's one who doesn't fumble, can kick left or right foot. In his best games, he's been one of the most dangerous players on the ground, but he has had a few down games this year. But, I mean, his talent is far too good to be lasting too much longer, you would think. And it might be a good chance for Richmond with their 3 picks to even partner him with his good teammate, Jake Soligo. So he might be another one that really comes into their thinking there.
I think you could argue Arlo Draper around this point as well would be considered best available for some. Just a different player to Sonzi, but he's got that explosive athleticism and such a classy user by foot, especially in the forward 50, that it'd be hard to overlook him, if you're a club like Richmond with multiple picks.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing. Obviously, Richmond have 3 picks here. Do you think they're going to make all 3, or do you think they might trade one, or depending on how many list spots, obviously they have? Like, what's the sort of thinking here? Because it's very rare you have 3 consecutive picks, certainly this high up at 28, 29, 30. Are we going to go for similar types? Do you think there might be a tall in there? How do you sort of see that's going to happen? And as we say that, a pick has come in.
Pick 28, Richmond is Tyler Sonsi.
So we sort of went early a bit before with Hawthorn's pick. We said Richmond was interested too. Hawthorn opted to go for Connor McDonald to, spoil Carlton's potential chances. But Tyler Sonsi ends up at Richmond at pick 28. Guys, you pretty much spoke to him, but I guess from a perspective for a Tigers fan, how do you sort of see them fitting into the lineup, do you think?
I mean, he's a Richmond supporter growing up, so he'd be absolutely stoked. And the player he models his game on is Trent Cotchin. So, I mean, that's exactly the type of player that they'd be looking for there. Another midfielder to really add to that young midfield coming up. I mean, the likes of Cotchin and the likes of Edwards, they're on the downward path now. I mean, Martin, he's only got about maybe 3-4 years to go. I mean, you've got guys like Sonsi coming through that'll be like absolutely incredible type of player for them. they may even look at Saligo now as a Eastern Rangers teammate who actually played for Richmond's VFL side as well. So he's an absolute bargain pick at this range, and I wouldn't be surprised if when it's all said and done, he'll be looked as the real steal of this draft.
Yeah, it's funny the links you can make as well, because obviously you say Saligo played for Richmond's VFL. Josh Fahey had probably his best VFL game against Richmond's VFL, so that's why I guess that bid for him might have made sense as well.
Absolutely. So Richmond still have another 2 picks on the board. What we might go while they're sort of deciding that is we're going to actually go to an interview during the week that we had with Sam Darcy of the Western Bulldogs. He's, was taken with pick 2 yesterday, and we think that, obviously he's going to be a real great player for them. He could play multiple positions across any key position. We might go to his interview now, and we'll be back with hopefully the next couple of Richmond picks.
Hello and welcome to another special AFL Draft video edition on Rookie Me Central. I'm Michael Alvaro. I'm joined today by Western Bulldogs father-son prospect Sam Darcy. How are you today, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Michael. Going well. Just been a busy last few weeks, but very excited and
Yeah, awesome. Obviously, as we're speaking, only a day out from the draft, you've got a bit of certainty, I guess, with where you're going to end up, but how are the nerves, and is it a bit of a surreal feeling?
The nerves aren't too bad, but when I try and zone in and think about it, is pretty surreal feeling, and very, very honoured, and very, very exciting time ahead.
Obviously, we do have a few questions from Doggies fans who are pretty keen to see you in the red, white and blue. But I guess personally, you're going to be a third generation Bulldog. It must be a pretty big thrill that's really close to happening.
Absolutely. I'm very, very proud to be part of such a rich history at the Bulldogs, and also other grandpa playing for Essendon. So very, very proud to be a part of that, and continue the family tradition.
And I mean, there's been a little bit of talk about the whole bidding system and where you might end up. As it stands, pick 2, I guess, is rumoured to be where you're going to end up. Is that something you kind of think about? Do you want to be as high a pick as possible, or are you not really worried about that too much?
Definitely be nice to be recognised as high as possible for all the work I've put in over the last few years. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I guess everyone's at ground zero once you get drafted. So wherever the bid comes or whatever, not too fussed at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've seen yesterday one of your good mates, a teammate, Nick Dacos, was a little upset that he hadn't had a chat with GWS. GWS holds pick 2. Have you spoken to them?
I did have an interview with the Giants. Might have been a couple months ago now. But I think it went pretty well, the interview, and we'll see what happens on the night.
Yeah. Have you spoken sort of extensively to other clubs, or has it just been them checking in with you and sort of knowing what's going to happen?
Kind of just kind of checking. I think I've spoken with about, I think, 4 or 5 different clubs, and it was just good to have that experience of what all the other draftees have been going through.
Yeah. We'll get on to, I guess, the topic of family. I just want to know, I guess, how involved your dad, Luke, is in your footy and your journey. Has he sort of been really into coaching and mentoring you, or has he sort of taken a bit of a back seat throughout it all?
He's kind of hasn't been really full on at all. He's just kind of taken that back seat and just kind of let me do my thing. But he's been really supportive at the same time. He's given me a lot of opportunities to play at different levels, and I think he was my coach back in the junior days, so I was pretty involved back then. But it's just if I ever needed feedback or want to go for a kick, he's always down. So he's been really great for me over the journey.
Awesome. Do you tend to talk footy at home, or sort of leave it on the training track and at work for him?
Not a lot of footy, but I think if I'm ever down for a convo about anything, he'll always be down to give me some advice, and
and he's obviously on the commentary team for Channel 7. What's the feeling like? Is it going to be a bit weird potentially having him calling your games?
Yeah, it would be pretty funny. Probably have to hand it over to one of the other guys, and if I get the ball, but yeah, I think it'll be pretty funny for the family back home having to watch that.
Yeah.
That I think they'd enjoy it.
Yeah, and on the rest of your family, obviously there's so much made of the link with your dad, but how has the rest of your family been in your football journey, and I guess just supporting you, that sort of inner circle you've got?
Yeah, they've all been really, really supportive, and yeah, helped me out a lot. I think yeah, both grandpas has been really, really awesome along the journey, and then I've got two younger brothers and a younger sister, and yeah, they both love the game as well, and yeah, it's been big family, all love the game. So yeah, it's been nice.
And on the Bulldogs, have you sort of had players and coaches get in touch with you recently? Obviously, you've spent a pre-season there and you've been training there a little bit, but have some of those guys there already been in touch with you in the build-up to this week?
I've been doing a lot of work with some of the physios and stuff at the club, and yeah, I've been in touch with a lot of the recruiting guys there, and had dinner with Luke Beveridge the other night. So yeah, that was nice, and yeah, but I think it'll all start once the name gets called out. Yeah.
Yeah. How is Bevo? Is this you get along with him all right?
Yeah, he's a great guy, and yeah, ripper. So yeah, I think I get along with him pretty well. So yeah, he's great guy.
Yeah, and you already know, obviously, a guy like Jamara Ugelhagen at the club. You went to school with him, played a little bit at Oakley, I assume, with him. It must be good to have some familiar faces there already.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'd be great. Very much looking forward to joining a club with guys like Jamara and all the great players and environment that club is surrounded by. So yeah, very much looking forward to getting to work with all those boys. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the Doggies. I assume you're a Doggies fan as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So how was it supporting them this year? And when they won the premiership a few years back, were you really into it, attending all the games, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very much into it. Still remember the 2016 granny very, very clearly, and yeah, being very excited, young kid with all the family, and seeing the emotions of all the supporters was awesome to witness. And yeah, I've been a big supporter. Love watching the Doggies run out every week. So yeah, it'd be pretty cool experience.
Yeah. Where do you fit in at the Bulldogs? Obviously, there's a pretty good key position cohort there. Yeah, where do you see yourself playing? Have you been told at all?
No, I haven't been told at all. Yeah, I'm not sure. They've obviously got a very, very strong list and great playing group. So yeah, I'll have to see what happens. I'll just keep working hard and yeah, whatever happens. Yeah.
Where do you see your best position?
I think I've been most comfortable playing as a forward throughout my whole junior career, and playing a bit of ruck the last couple of years as well. But played down back for Oakley this year, so I think I'm pretty flexible in where I can play my best footy. I think so. Yeah, I think I'm happy with whatever. I think yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you had that little shake-up playing down back. When you were told about that, what was the reaction? Were you pretty keen to get into it, or a little bit sort of wary of that? Because everyone wants to kick goals as well, right?
Yeah. I was a bit probably when I first got the news, I was a bit wary, but I was probably just excited at that time just to be back playing footy. So I was happy everywhere. But once I started playing and learning the role, I was just loving it. I think and it was just great to learn that new role from what I've been used to on the footy field.
Obviously, there's a lot good about you if you're a top 5 pick, but what are the areas you're still looking to improve on, and have clubs sort of given that feedback to you as of yet, or are you just sort of taking it from your or each program you've been in so far?
Yeah, whenever I've been seeking feedback from different clubs, I think one of the main goals for me would be to improve my strength is at AFL level or the bigger body, so to be able to try and match it with them. I think that's one of the goals, to put on some size over the few pre-seasons, and probably what else, just just build the fundamentals, just keep improving, honing the skills, and just try and take my game to another level, and build the running capacity to be able to run out a full game at a higher level.
Yeah, awesome.
Welcome back to the AFL Draft Night coverage, thanks to Rookie Me Central. In the time you've gone, obviously that was Sam Darcy talking about his lead up to the draft, son of Luke, and now he's become a Bulldog, of course, to follow in his footsteps. So, with pick 29, we've got Sam Banks of the Tasmania Devils, obviously heading to Richmond with that second selection. Grace, tell us a bit about him.
So Sam currently stands at 185. Obviously, great at kicking, great decision making. His obviously athleticism is amazing. Could work in inside game a little bit more. Boys, what do you think?
A shock to see Sam this high because he didn't play a lot of football this year due to his wrist injury, but we know what he can bring, just due to what he did as a bottom major last year with his, his class and his work on the outside. And as you mentioned, maybe he needs to work on the inside game a little bit more. But I think a club like Richmond is going to find a really good way to utilise him to the best of his strengths.
Absolutely. And the second, or should say the third selection that Richmond have had consecutively, after Tyler Sonsie and Sam Banks, they picked up Dandenong Stingrays, Judson Clark. Grace, what do you sort of have on him?
Yeah, so obviously his speed, agility, his goal sense is excellent, as you'd expect from a small forward. Running carry, also excellent. Could work on maybe contested game a little bit. Boys, what do you think?
Yeah, another who could work on his contested game, Grace. I think though what the value he brings and the way he rounds out Richmond's crop is great. So really suits their sort of style of play. I know Ed's spoken about the sort of surge mentality he brings. That's Richmond to a T, really. So they get the class in Sonsie, the guy who's the finished product. He kicks the ball inside 50. You can damage. You can kick goals. Banks and Clark, they're the runners. So Banks a rebounder. You can play on the outside as well. And Judson Clark will work high up the ground and deliver inside 52. So altogether, they've got a great crop that, maybe not so much that in those inside types, but guys who can really move the ball forward effectively.
Sweet. So with pick 31, West Coast have picked Brady Hoth from the Peel Thunder.
Yeah, Brady Hoth, really amazing season. He's sort of come out of the blue a lot. Very exciting forward. A lot of people sort of pegged him to be around this selection. West Coast have gone local, a South Australian. West Australian. And obviously someone who can come straight in, doesn't have to move. He's just got those really eye-catching traits. I know you guys are big fans of him. So, Michael, give us a bit of an insight into what he does so well.
Yeah, Brady Hoth, he's versatile, so he can play pretty much anywhere. I think he sort of thrived off half back in his league debut for Peel. Plays off a wing. He can play at half forward. He did that for his state side and at Colts level. So you can play in a variety of roles. He was pretty consistent and developed really quickly this year. So came a little bit from nowhere to end up, just on the precipice of the top 30. Ends up staying home at 31, going to West Coast, and I think it's a good fit. He's just he's a player who's really developable. He's a good user going forward. So there's plenty they can extract from Brady Howe.
Yeah, and he adds another one on the wing. So you'll have Hoff on one wing, Campbell Chesser on the other. I mean, that's something they've really gone to set up. It looks like the Eagles, so that's a really good pick for them.
Yeah, and now that Brady Hoff's off the board, with pick 32, Geelong have gone a really exciting player, and one we might not have expected this pick, North Adelaide's James Willis. Grace, what do you have on him?
Yeah, so he's obviously versatile, athletic. He's a great inside-outside balance, which is awesome. Very explosive, which you would expect from a midfielder.
Absolutely. He's a bit of a bolter coming, he's expected late in the draft or potentially even the rookie draft. Guys, was this a bit of a surprise? We do know Geelong don't mind pulling out a bit of a surprise in the national draft.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth, Peter. That's exactly what they like doing. They've put a bit of a rabbit out of the hat. Probably not a massive surprise. We know that he's been in draft contention, James Willis. We know what he can do. He's a really exciting sort, pretty explosive and just like that new generation of midfielder who can really explode. He's got that athleticism, so pretty exciting type.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one that was injured throughout the year, so maybe didn't get to show off his traits all that often. But Geelong obviously liked what they saw in those brief glimpses that we got.
Yeah, and his tackling's another thing he really does well. He tackles to hurt. He's a big long kick as well. He can kick 50 metres pretty easily, so he's a very powerful little player.
Ed, Sydney have the next pick. Who do you reckon they're going to grab?
I mean, there's quite a few names that would have been in there, but it looks like they have made their selection. But it is a bid.
Absolutely. So Sydney are just making their pick now. Just coming through to us. They have gone with pick 33. They've made a bid on Mitch Owens. So, guys, I mean, it's straightforward from here. I think St Kilda are going to match this very, very quickly, you think?
You'd think it's still pending, but we do think that they'll match it. Matches their draft plan. They don't have too much in the way of points to cover him and Marcus Windhager if a bid comes there. But we'll see how we go. We think that this one's going to go through and St Kilda will end up with Mitch Owens.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did speak to Mitch Owens, as you know, pre-draft. We had an interview, so be sure to check it out on our YouTube account and also download the draft guide if you want to find some more information about him. We know Sandringham Dragons, quite an exciting talent. He's really come up the boards. There were rumours he might go in the top 20, and then in the end he hasn't ended up doing that, so he's been able to go, basically, we presume, to the Saints here. The Saints, I can't see them not matching. Grace, what kind of attributes does he bring?
Obviously, very courageous, two-way effort, which is awesome. Very explosive. Obviously, as a wing, he's going to have pretty good overhead marking skills. Could work on a bit more exposure, but yeah. Boys, what do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think we were there for a lot of his games this year. We just found ourselves a lot of Sandringham games, as you do. But yeah, his versatility and his athleticism are really the two things that you're looking at here with his strengths. And, he played a few good games, but that Vic Country, Vic Metro Challenge game was the one where he really broke out, came in as an emergency as well in the last minutes, and didn't disappoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does look like St Kilda have matched the bid. No surprise there whatsoever. So, obviously, we know Sydney should be up next. And then we've got North Melbourne, Adelaide, West Coast, North Melbourne, and Melbourne. Guys, we've had a real distinct lack of live trades in this, tonight, but in the draft as a whole, but certainly tonight. Do you think we're going to get one at some point?
Yeah, you'd hope so. As you know, Pete, we love a live trade here. So it'd be great to see clubs get a little bit more, I guess, daring, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, clubs may just be rating the talent that's available as too high to give up for the offers they're getting. But I know from a personal point of view, I'd be very happy to see a few live trades go through.
Yeah, getting a bit bored, Ed.
Yeah, I'd agree that there's probably a lot of players that are coming to those clubs and they're just going, wow, we actually really like this player and we really don't want to part with them. And a lot of the clubs that will be wanting those picks, they're only offering a future second round, which is, that's another draft that's going to be somewhat compromised, especially for Victorians with those under 17s not being able to play. So it's hard to really get a gauge on that. So do they take the known quantity they know now and just pick them? I mean, there's not going to be many offers other clubs can make. So we'll see what happens. But now it's up to Sydney now to have another go. They might put on a bid on Josh Fahey, have a go at their crosstown rivals there. But there's a lot of other players that they could be looking for as well. Plenty that are slid. I mean, Blake Howes is one who's really up there. Arlo Draper. They may go for Corey Warner, the brother of Chad. So if they want to go tall, might want to get some more key defenders in. Say a Charlie Dean could definitely be in that range, or even though Jack Williams is more of a forward, he might be one that gets looked down back. So, and even a Matty Roberts might be another one they could consider.
On that, I'll just add, and ask you, Ed. Obviously, we probably link someone like Corey Warner to Sydney at this pick, but guys like Draper is still on the board. They've probably had him higher on their draft board. So, do they sort of scrap that plan and go with the best available? You think?
Oh, they might do so. I mean, at that range, they may feel that they did that already with Sheldrick and will go to a more pressing needs. I think their midfield and their key defensive stocks is definitely an area they want to bolster. And, a player like Draper is someone who can play for the midfield. Same with Warner, can play for the midfield as well. So There's plenty of good options there. I mean, we're seeing some really good players available at this range. So, I mean, the way it's looking, this draft is certainly a lot better than we probably would have anticipated at the midway point when we weren't getting any games going.
So, guys, obviously St Kilda have some awesome pickups. How do you reckon they'll settle in?
Yeah, you'd think very well. Obviously, Mitch Owens already locked in, and possibly Marcus Windhager going through, have been there for a few years now, and they know each other quite well through junior football and Sandringham Dragons. So they'd be very familiar with the club, and obviously Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller has that pre-existing connection, so he probably has a fair idea of what goes on there. And, you know, St Kilda would have been talking to all these players prior to the draft as well, so they probably have a good idea of what's going to happen when they walk in the doors.
Yeah, and obviously Wanganeen Miller has that link. His stepfather Terry played sort of, I think, in the early to late 2000s. So yeah, handy link there. And they're going to get two guys who have been to and through the club throughout their junior careers. So yeah, it's a very familiar sort of feel for the Saints and their new crop.
Absolutely. So we've got Adelaide coming up in a few selections. Now, we know they've only got Josh Rochelle on the board thus far, so they've had a bit of a wait since their first selection. How do you sort of see for the Crows fans out there what they might be targeting with that selection in the late second round?
Yeah, could they target, Cooper Murley is one that sort of slid throughout the year. And, you know, some might say that two smalls in Rochelle and Murley might be too much in one draft, but, you know, Murley's part of the AFL Academy, and as a bottom major, he was rated as a genuine sort of top 15 to first round candidate, and he slipped due to injury. Do they sort of remember the form that he was in as a local as well? They would have had a pretty good look at him last year. Yeah,
I mean, it's a good shout. I think if Arlo Draper's there, then Adelaide fans would probably riot and burn the place down if he wasn't selected. So we'll see how that goes. I think we do have a pick, though.
Yeah, we do have a pick, and it is the famous slider, the most talked about slider in the draft. South Adelaide's Matthew Roberts. Obviously, you know, he was talked up at the start of the year as potential top 5, certainly top 10. Then it sort of slipped out to, you know, the third round, and it's gone. He's ended up in the second round, so it's been a bit higher than perhaps what some were touting, but certainly lower at the end. Grace, Matty Roberts, what do you got to say about him?
Yeah, so he stands at 183, which is absolutely awesome, especially for that forward, and he's also versatile going into that midfield. Got to have footy smarts to play forward and to transition into that mid. Guys, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's a nice pick. I think, there was a lot spoken about him, as Pete alluded to there, and while we thought he might slide completely, you know, sort of down to round 3 and maybe even onwards, Sydney gets a really reliable player and one who's a hard runner. It's probably what they, I guess, a trait that they value, and he's probably one that they're going to be able to work on the outside as well. So they might see him sort of on that wing or as a high half forward, and that sort of hard-working nature is something that he'll bring. He backs his skills as well. It's probably something he can still sharpen, but he backs his decision making, and obviously that mid forward rotation, the versatility is a real strength of his as well.
Yeah, it's another left footer as well. I mean, they've got Sheldrick, the inside midfielder left footer. You've got another one in Roberts who is more likely maybe to play on a wing and as a high half forward with his running capacity. I mean, he really impressed playing for South Adelaide senior football as well. I mean, he managed to hit the scoreboard on occasion, and certainly got two players there that are got the body to be ready-made to have an impact next year. I mean, Sydney will definitely be wanting to improve on where they got. They almost made the top 4 this year. They'll be wanting to go even better next year.
Do you guys think that, are you surprised that he went before Arlo Draper?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that. And it sort of links back to how the game's trending, I guess. And I think one of the things that Matthew Roberts probably needs to improve on is his athleticism, and you'd argue that that's the biggest strength of Draper. So just with how the modern game's being played, you'd expect that Draper would go first. But again, you can never really overrate football IQ, I don't think. You need to know where to be to get the ball and how to use it. So it's a good selection either way.
We talk about, and there are really key differences in those two players. So Roberts is able to find the ball outside of stoppage. that's probably something Draper can work on, even though he can roll forward as well. So it's a sort of balance of the traits. But I think we do have another pick in, so I'll throw back to you guys.
Absolutely. So, North Melbourne have made their selection. Pick 35, Paul Curtis out of the Western Jets. Grace?
Yeah, so obviously playing for Vic Metro and the Jets. Smart, goal sense, clean hands, obviously really good one-on-one, and just has that X factor about him.
Absolutely. Guys, Paul Curtis, what do you think?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be there that day that I guess he put himself on the radar very well and truly with his 4 goals in, I think it ended up being 8 minutes against Sandringham. So, you know, he's got that ability where he can just kick an absolute bag out of nowhere and create something out of nothing. And, you know, he did it again. He followed up with his Vic Metro trial game and then the challenge match as well with a bag of 3 in each. So he's got that form. And I think as a forward, you know, he's really exciting. Good at ground level. He's got some agility and obviously knows where the sticks are.
Yeah, I mean, he's come a long way, I feel like, both character-wise and on-field from the start of the year. So I remember speaking to him during pre-season and he almost tongue-in-cheek was sort of joking about how he wasn't that fit. He hadn't been working hard enough on his endurance, but having improved that throughout the year, he even got a little run in midfield. So it shows a bit of promise in his game. He probably will be that natural small forward, and it's a position that North Melbourne would have been targeting. We know what they've already got. You know, they went for Josh Goda with their previous pick in this round. So, yeah, I think Paul Curtis is a really, really shrewd pick to come in and one of the better pure small forwards of this crop.
Yeah, and I mean, Curtis and Goda, I mean, they're ones that me and Michael got to witness firsthand. I mean, that was a game that Curtis didn't get to hit the scoreboard, but just the way he was able to get himself into those situations, whether it was running back with the fight to try and take a mark or just putting himself in situations, that's what you need from your small forward. And that is to just be there all the time. You want to kick the goals. That's what you're there for. You're there to hit the scoreboard, put some pressure on, take that mark. I mean, he's got all those traits there. As long as he gets that fitness up, he's going to be a very dangerous small forward.
Absolutely. And it's good to see some of the small forwards getting taken. We've seen Sam Butler, we've seen Jesse Motlop, we've seen Paul Curtis, and there's some other forwards, as we know, like Judson Clark, Brady Hoff. Do you guys sort of see that trend that's happening in this sort of, I guess, round? A lot of forwards and there's outside midfielders as well. Obviously, there's a couple of different types in there with a ruck and inside mid, but the majority is sort of that outside types or those small forwards. Is that sort of the theme that's happening along in this round?
Yeah, I think the better midfielders have already gone. So it's a midfielders draft. We've seen those prime ball winners go early. And now we've got the round the square sort of runners. So there's a lot of running power available in this draft, and they're the sort of players that we're seeing go. So, you know, your Connor McDonald's, your Sam Butlers, your Sam Banks, Judson Clark, Brady Hoff, James Willis, like all of those players have a very similar quality. And you're right, Peter, to sort of point that out. They are similar in that kind of trait. So those around the square runners in this kind of range where it's really even, yeah, they're being picked up now. And Adelaide, this pick's going to be very interesting as well.
Do you think Adelaide might go local for this selection, or do you think they might look abroad? Obviously, we know that they went with Josh Rochelle, as we said, so that wasn't a local pick, though was a country boy. Do you think they're going to go with a South Australian like an Arlo Draper, or do you think they might look further afield?
Yeah, like we touched on, obviously the potential's there. Draper is a very good player, and we spoke about Murley, who may have slipped under the radar due to injury, but I think Adelaide are probably one club that they don't shy away from taking interstate talent if they do view them as the genuinely best available. So I guess that's what makes this pick so interesting, because we have so many good players left.
Yeah, but I think Pete knows well sort of where we would go. So, yeah, I think he may be alluding to that Draper or Murley pick. Draper, I think, yeah, on talent, there's little chance surely he gets through Adelaide. And as I said before, Adelaide fans would probably riot and burn the place down. So hopefully, fingers crossed for them, that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah. Certainly. Look, it's an interesting time. Adelaide fans, as we know, they're taking a bit of time. So perhaps there's someone on the board that they weren't expecting. Perhaps it is an Arlo Draper. Perhaps it's a key position of option. Perhaps they're going a Rhett Bazzo, who's still coming along the board. We know we've got Adelaide up next, West Coast, North Melbourne and Melbourne. Just to sort of recap the second round, how it's gone. The first pick, Fremantle picked up Matthew Johnson from Subiaco. No surprises there. He was the sort of favourite, if you like, to be picked that after they slipped all the way from the 10th spot, which we thought that he might end up. North Melbourne then went Josh Goda from the Calder Cannons with 22. Hawthorn with pick 23 selected Sam Butler. Geelong had back-to-back picks at 24 and 25 and went local talent for both. They selected Toby Conway, the ruck, and Mitch Nevitt, obviously that tall inside midfielder. Then Hawthorn went Connor McDonald, stole him from right under Carlton's noses. We knew the Blues were keen on him. Carlton then picked up Jesse Motlop, who's a Fremantle Next Generation Academy. We know they can't match because it was inside the top 40. Richmond then had 3 picks and certainly took their time trying to work it out. So they came up with Tyler Sonsie and Sam Banks and Judson Clark. So they had a lot of outside, bit of talent, bit of speed, love to move the ball. And then along came West Coast with Brady Hoff out of Peel Thunder, another local for them. And then you look at Geelong, they picked up James Willis, which was perhaps the surprise of this draft so far, the round at least for the second round. And then St Kilda matched a bit on Mitch Owens after Sydney targeted Mitch Owens. Then Sydney picked up Matthew Roberts and North Melbourne went Paul Curtis. I mean, we have sort of spoken on these guys individually, guys. But it was interesting to see Sydney bid on Mitch Owens and then pick Matthew Roberts. They're not exactly like for like. So do you take that as keeping St Kilda honest, or did they perhaps not feel that there was another player similar to Mitch Owens that could fill that void that they might have?
Yeah, I mean, it might have just been a sort of rankings-based thing. So they do have some similar traits. We spoke about the running power. Both players go both ways. So that might be the trait they're after rather than, I mean, they're different sizes and, you know, one's better aerially, one has more upside. So, yeah, they are a little different, as you point out there, Pete. But it might have just been that Mitch Owens, they thought he was around the range and, you know, it's a mix of keeping St Kilda accountable because the bid makes sense there. But then, okay, we can't get him. We'll get Matthew Roberts in instead, who offers something that we need still. And he's also a player that we have sort of in that range on the board.
Now, it's quite interesting. We're getting to the position now, as we know, Adelaide have the pick 36. Obviously, they're taking their time. It usually means, hopefully, there might be a live trade on the cards. Now, Collingwood have accrued 4 third-round picks. They've got 46 and 51. They do need a key forward or a key position player at least that might be able to swing. They do potentially a ruck, but definitely a key position player. Could Collingwood be potentially dealing with Adelaide knowing that Rhett Bazzo is still on the board as well as Jack Williams, but Rhett Bazzo particularly could be a good fit for Collingwood? What do you guys think?
Possibly. If I was a betting man, I'd say that Melbourne are probably the team dealing with Adelaide at the moment. They were the ones on the screen before, but it'd just be interesting to see, you know, what clubs are going to do now. You'd assume that this is sort of the area in the draft where some clubs might have someone still left in their top 15, but some might not have anyone left in their top 40 or just on their board at all. So we might see some more live trading, and that's always exciting to see.
It's interesting. They did try and get a trade through with the Ds, but it was not approved, which is always intriguing. I don't think we see too many of those guys. What do you think they tried to do?
I don't know, maybe they just went over their time limit. That's sort of how it appeared to us, but it could have just been a trade that the AFL deemed too much one way.
Well, after all that, they do have a pick in, and at pick 36, Adelaide have selected Jake Saligo from the Eastern Rangers. We've seen a few Eastern Rangers go today. It's been quite a good time for them. Obviously, he's a versatile player who can, play in multiple positions, go around. He's had a good season. I know the Rangers really rated him highly. We thought he might have gone later and then he went earlier. Grace, what can you tell us about him?
Yeah, so he currently stands at 179. His obviously work rate is immaculate. Clean hands, agility, kicking penetration, which is what you need as a forward and a midfielder. Boys, what do you think?
Yeah, immaculate work rate from Jake Saligo. I think that's about right, Grace. So, has that sort of capacity to run all day, find plenty of the ball, and I think once Tyler Sonsie sort of was injured there for the Rangers, he really stepped up and became that primary ball winner. He might be small, but you can really dig in, he can tackle, and then, he probably doesn't use the ball as well as Sonsie, but gets some penetration behind his kicks. He can hit the scoreboard too. So there's plenty to like about him. Obviously, Adelaide I guess what do we know? We sort of predicted it. We thought they'd go local. They haven't, but they bring in some good value here, Ed.
Yes, I mean, Soligo really pushes hard defensively. That was a really major thing for me watching him play for the midfield, how hard he runs back. He'll go down. He'll even take some intercept marks. He's pretty brave overhead for his size. So even though he's played mostly as a midfielder this year, I reckon he could easily fill in a small defender or small forward role at the next level. I mean, you'll find a lot of midfielders that are draft eligible don't end up becoming midfielders. They end up becoming forwards and backs. That's why it's always good to show a bit of versatility and a little bit of athleticism in your game, being able to show that you can, you're not just a one-trick pony, and that's Soligo to a T. He's not your stock standard type of player. He can do a range of things.
And here we go. We were just talking about him then. Pick 37, West Coast have gone Rhett Bazzo. Gee, we're getting a definite West Australian feel here for the Eagles. Obviously, they did pick Campbell Chesser the night before, but since then they've picked Brady Hoff and Rhett Bazzo. And Grace, what can you tell us about Rhett Bazzo?
Yeah, so he's obviously one of the taller prospects, obviously being 195. Reading the play, excellent. His intercept marking is outstanding. Versatility, which is really good for that kind of taller player. Maybe needs a bit more repeat efforts, but guys, what do you reckon in the draft room?
Yeah, an excellent pickup, and I think with an aging Jeremy McGovern, there's not many better intercept markers left on the board here, if any at all. So you pick the local kid and sort of back him to develop. And, I think Bazzo's an interesting prospect. He's not one that, really gets physical, but he does often beat his opponent just through his smarts and that reading of the play that Grace mentioned.
Perfect example of that. He played against Jacob Van Rooyen in the Waffle Colts grand final. Van Rooyen had kicked 3 goals in the first quarter. Looked dangerous. Rhett Bazzo went to him, and while Van Rooyen would probably wrestle the hell out of him in a one-on-one duel, he sort of stayed off him, was able to intercept, read the play, get his other defenders to chime in as well, third up. So that's how they sort of beat him in the end and won the premiership, was by keeping Van Rooyen at bay. So, really composed user of the ball as well down there. So he's a good pick for West Coast, and they go local again after getting Chesser in round 1.
So we do have a live trade-in, which is exciting. It's not quite where we were. It's a bit lower down. Collingwood have made a trade. Not one of their future thirds. They've done a future fourth for pick 48 from GWS. So it's actually a third rounder for GWS, but they did have a number of selections there. They probably won't be using it, I'm guessing. They're probably only using one more selection. But Collingwood have been able to get up to pick 48. In exchange for a future fourth. I'll throw to Declan. Declan, were the Giants pretty much just going to pick up Josh Fay and that might be it from here, or what do you see the reasoning behind this trade?
Well, yeah, that's been what the indication is from the club, is that, it will be Fay as our last selection, and then we'll probably just be happy to go to the rookie draft or have a player on as a supplementary signing period player. But I do believe North Melbourne have made a selection, so I'll throw back to you now, Pete.
Absolutely. North Melbourne have, with pick 38, selected Miller Bergman of the Dandenong Stingrays. Grace, what do you have on him?
He's probably one of the most versatile players in the draft prospects, which is absolutely exciting. His agility, his outside game, his marking, versatility, excellent, all excellent. Boys, what do you think?
Not a bad pick, and one on upside. I know early on in the year, Ed, you identified him as one to watch, and we're all pretty impressed with him and that versatility you touched on, Grace. He can play both ends of the ground and on the wing. He's really light on, but his best traits sort of are adaptable to each position. So he's really good overhead. He's a really sort of booming, penetrative kick. And, whether it be sort of being that forward marking target or locking down back, he's got it all. So a pretty high upside player for North to work on, you think?
I mean, yeah, he showed that early on. I mean, when we all went up to Bendigo and he started the game off halfback, winning plenty of the ball. And then in the second half, just for something different, went up forward and he looked really dangerous, playing more as kind of like a full forward. Yeah. Just he was always on the move. He was clean and he was a real handful. So, he's definitely a player to watch long-term for the North Melbourne fans.
And we have another selection to end the second round. Melbourne have picked up Blake Howes. Now, they were rumoured to pick him up with pick 19. They went with Jacob Van Rooyen instead. They've managed to get him at 39, which is a bit of a steal. So Grace, what do you sort of have on him?
So he's standing at 190. His athleticism and versatility is elite. His disposal rate and ceiling rate is excellent. Boys in the draft room, what do you think?
Yeah, a really excellent selection, especially considering how far he slipped. I think most of us had him in that first round or early 20s contention. So to see him down here at 39 is a real shock. But I think Melbourne will be really happy with this. And I mentioned it before. I think an underrated aspect of Howe's game is his defensive work, especially in that forward half. Is tall players can generally get away with just doing the stuff in the air, but Howe's is happy to follow up at ground level and try to force a mistake with his pressure.
Yeah, and the thing is, he is probably more so known for his aerial work. So having that point of difference, being able to follow up, get a bit of aggression about you as well for a sort of more lean, more polished, catchy or eye-catching and flair sort of player. Having that to your game is really good as well. We know he's a very good friend of Finn Callaghan, thought he might end up at GWS. They've missed that boat, but Melbourne, as you say, both of our hosts, Grace and Pete, they could have picked him up a lot earlier, but they get him at pick 39 at the end of round 2, and that's great value.
We are at the end of round 2, as we said. So that wraps up this second round of action. We'll be back for the third round shortly. West Coast in that round picked up Brady Hoff and Rhett Bazzo. Last night they picked up Campbell Chesser out of the Sandringham Dragons and Vic Country. We spoke to him during the week, so we're going to throw to that interview now.
Hello and welcome to another special video edition for Rookie Me Central. I'm Michael Alvaro. Today, another very special treat. We've got Campbell Chesser with us. Campbell, how are you?
Yeah, going well. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Obviously, one day out as we're talking here from the big night, draft night. You might go night 1 or night 2, but how the nerves feeling?
Yeah, I think I'm in that weird situation where I can kind of be, it could be the last pick of the first night or the first of the second. You never know. And I'm around that boat. So it'd be really interesting to see. I'm keen to see all my mates get drafted as well. Got some really close mates to go early in the night, which is exciting for them. And I'm more excited than nervous. I think. Just looking forward to seeing, I guess, where I end up and where my mates end up as well.
What's life like for you at the moment? Obviously, you just finished all your exams and things like that. What are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, I finished exams last week and kind of had a few.
Hello and welcome to another special video edition. Hello and welcome to another special video edition. Hello and welcome to another. Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to another special video edition for Rookie Me Central. Hello and welcome to another. Hello and welcome to another. Hello and welcome to another special video edition for Rookie Me. Hello and welcome to another special video edition for Rookie Me Central. I'm Michael. Hello and welcome to another special video edition for Rookie Me Central. I'm Michael Alvaro. Today, another very special treat. We've got Campbell Chesser with us. Campbell, how are you?
Yeah, going well. Thanks for having me.
Hello and welcome to another special video edition for Rookie Me Central. I'm Michael Alvaro. Today, another.
Is this guy, so you updated the draft order? What's going on? It's 249s.
Oh, I thought I removed 48. I must have accidentally done that. So GWS had 2 in a row.
Yeah.
So it was meant to be.
249.
Oh, no, that's right.
Yeah, there's 249. So.
Yeah, it's just because I was trying to figure out where I stopped.
Hello and welcome to another special video edition for Rookie Me Central. I'm Michael Alvaro. Today, another very special treat. We've got Campbell Chesser with us. Campbell, how are you?
Yeah, going well. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Obviously, one day out as we're talking here from the big night, draft night. You might go night 1 or night 2, but how the nerves feeling?
Yeah, I think I'm in that weird situation where I can kind of be, it could be the last pick of the first night or the first of the second. You never know. And I'm around that boat. So it'd be really interesting to see. I'm keen to see all my mates get drafted as well. Got some really close mates to go early in the night, which is exciting for them. And I'm more excited than nervous. I think. Just looking forward to seeing, I guess, where I end up and where my mates end up as well.
What's life like for you at the moment? Obviously, you just finished all your exams and things like that. What are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, I finished exams last week and kind of had a few nights with the schoolmates and stuff in Melbourne, which was really good. A lot of us finished on the same night, which was good. So we kind of had a good few days there, and then travelled home to Albury, and I was lucky enough to train with a few mates, Nick Murray and Paddy Parnell and Dan Turner, who are all in the system at the moment. They're all home and on their off-season breaks. I was able to train with them and lock in for a few days there, which was really good. But glad I'm back in Melbourne. Kind of escaped it all for a few days, which was really good. But glad I'm back in Melbourne now, and kind of back absorbed in the draft talk and all that kind of stuff, which is going to be pretty crazy. But it's been good.
Absolutely. Exciting couple of days. How do you assess your year though? Obviously had a few injuries, maybe didn't get the chance to hit your best form throughout, but you showed some good glimpses. So how did you rate it?
It probably wasn't as consistent as I wanted it to be. Just purely, it was quite disjointed with not only COVID, that kind of impacted everyone, but also my knee. I think tearing my meniscus in the second round of the year, having played kind of one practice match and into round one, Oakley, which is a good game for us to get the win, and then good win again in the second round. I thought we were going to really push any team really in the NAB League with our Sandy team this year. It was a really good list, and I was really excited by that, but quite frustrated with the year, to be honest, a little bit, and it was hard to find consistency in terms of my form, but I guess showed enough hopefully to get on a list. I'm not fussed about the pick at all. I couldn't really care less about what number it is, but I'm just looking forward to getting on a list and hopefully I think it'll be a bit different depending on what club you go to, whether or not you can get there straight away or after the Chrissy break, but looking forward to really cracking in and hopefully I've just done enough to get on a list. Yeah,
and what's that chat been like with clubs? Have you had a couple of late meetings or anything like that? Do you sort of know where the interest lies?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few clubs come up to home for home visits over the last like when I went home, pretty much straight away, and had a few there, which the clubs in the late teens, Brizzy, all those kind of clubs at the moment, where they sit right as we speak. But I think they can change on the night as well, which is pretty crazy with live trading and stuff. So no clubs really said we're definitely taking you at this pick, and I have no idea with that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where the nerves lie, I guess. But outside of that, I think I just want to get on a list. To be honest, I couldn't really care. Where it is, I'm pretty open to moving interstate. Obviously, I'd prefer to live in Melbourne because it's just where it's easier for me. It'll be an easier transition with my having mates outside of the club and stuff like that. But and obviously knowing Melbourne quite well, having lived here for the past 4 years. But I guess I'm quite open to moving interstate as well. I've lived away from home for 4 years, so it should be fine. Yeah,
well, I was just about to segue into that. You've lived away from home, got your scholarship at Melbourne Grammar, so and you're happy to move interstate. But talk to me a little bit about that journey, how that sort of set you up now for potentially living away from home.
Yeah, well, I think, as cliche as I've said it a few times over the past couple of weeks, but there's no AFL team in Albury, so if I was to get drafted, it was moving. The reality is that I'm going to have to move away from home anyway, and I think like the past 4 years in terms of preparing myself, it's probably more so, I guess, the last 24 months has been when I've been moving back and forth from Melbourne to Albury. I've been predominantly actually in Albury, which has been weird. Wasn't expecting that, obviously, and COVID circumstances kind of pushed me that way. But I think my resilience and ability to kind of adapt to a new environment is definitely going to hold me in good stead. Whatever club I land at, I guess. Yeah,
it's pretty easy to see your strengths with just a couple of viewings on field. In terms of your improvement areas, have you had feedback from clubs and your coaches and things like that throughout the year of what you want to work on?
Less from clubs. I think we more just speak about character and all that kind of stuff. I don't really ask too much. I think I haven't really asked any clubs really about feedback in particular, but more so just in line with Jackson Cornberg, Sandy coach now at Gold Coast, and he's been great for me the last kind of 4 years. It hasn't just been this year, but I've been trying to, since 16's a weakness, or I didn't see it as a massive deficiency, but a little weakness that I had was my consistency in my kicking. So that was something that I really wanted to improve, and I think it's definitely improved. Jacko and I have worked a lot on the fundamentals over the past kind of 2 years, especially breaking it down with video analysis and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really good, and it's definitely improved. And now I'm just kind of trying to bring my weaknesses up to my strengths whilst keeping continuing to improve my strengths as well, because that's obviously really important.
Yep. In terms of position, you've played a little bit of everywhere, probably apart from forward. Where do you see yourself fitting in best?
At AFL level, I think probably more outside, hybrid, maybe across half back or on the wing. Probably, more so on the wing, probably most comfortable there at the moment. But I guess, it just really depends on where I can get a spot and, if I can kind of forge myself to get some games earlier, that'd be great. But just kind of wherever a club needs me. I think more outside player to start, and then hopefully, with the aim of kind of transitioning into the midfield after a few years once a body develops and really develop an understanding of that, I guess, aspect of the game.
Yeah, and was that the plan this year as well with Sandy to sort of go into the inside a little bit more as the season wore on?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've played a fair bit across half-back and on the wings over the last 4 years, and I saw versatility is one of my strengths, and that was something I wanted to kind of expose this year, but it was quite hard to kind of learn a new position when you weren't playing many games. I think it was 4 games for the year, and they were kind of spread out over the course of the year as well. So it was quite hard for me to kind of find consistency, one in the position that I was comfortable in, but also learning a new role. So yeah, definitely I was looking to play mid.
Welcome back to AFL Draft Night. Thanks to Rookie Me Central. That was Campbell Chesser talking about his draft journey, I guess, if you like, leading up to the AFL draft. There are a lot of clubs interested in him. He did mention West Coast chatted to him during the week, and that's who ended up picking him. So he went west, and he's been the only non-West Australian to go to a West Australian club thus far. So good luck to him. In the meantime, we're into round 3, and we already have a pick on the board. Sydney have picked Corey Warner from East Fremantle with pick 40. He's the brother of Chad. And Grace, give us a bit of an idea into his game and what he does well.
Yeah, so obviously as a midfielder, his endurance, his running carry, his kicking penetration is all excellent. His fast bursts throughout the contest, which is what you really want in a midfielder. Boys in the draft room, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think Sydney's got a lot of the same. This is a guy we thought that they might target. Obviously, there's that link with his brother Chad already at the club. They are 2 different players, so we know Chad goes on the inside. He's a tough nut. Corey's got, I guess, that same attitude, the same toughness, but his running power is his strength. So, patrols the wing. He can get forward, really drives into attack. He's got that left foot as well. So, I think we said before about the left footers. Sheldrick, Roberts, Warner, a lot of the same in this draft crop, but still, obviously pretty valuable players, Ed.
And it adds to, Gordon and Campbell are 2 other left footers who are great kicks. You got Blakey there as well, so, and they've just lost Dawson, so they know that they rate their left footers. They're usually a lot of the better kicks in the draft when they're coming through. So, I mean, he's one that he's not just there because of his brother. He's a good player in his own right. Like he's fully deserved to get picked in this range. And I mean, I think Sydney can walk away with these 3 picks. They've definitely added to their midfield, and you got to say they've done a really good job.
And what also happened during the break, not only did we get a selection just then, we also had a trade. Port Adelaide received pick 55 from Carlton in exchange for a future 4th. We haven't had too many live trades tonight. We've only had the one before that. But before I get your thoughts on that, we actually have a selection coming in. And Brisbane, with pick 41, have selected James Tunstall of East Perth. So they've gone with him. I know that, Declan, you're a massive fan. We'll hear from Grace first. Grace, what do you have to say about him?
Yeah, so obviously as a midfielder, he's got great clean hands, a great accumulation, awesome decision making, which allows a bit of creativity along the mids, which is great. Boys, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Grace. He's a pretty consistent performer week to week, and I think that 4-quarter consistency is something that he needs to work on. But he's a really good selection. I think he's a genuine contested mid. He can play outside, but he's probably best when he is winning the hard ball and he's in the thick of it. He's actually quite skinny, so there's a lot of room for development there, and he could turn into maybe not a tall, but a bigger body ball winner. And yeah, I think people speak about Amos and his drive up from Basildon. Well, Tunstall was doing it with him, so yeah, a lot of development left.
We're talking about character with Brisbane prospects. They got Wilmot, and James Tunstall has had to, go through the ringer just to play footy each weekend. So that's obviously a credit to him, and he's done really well and shown really great development throughout the year. I like his balance too. So you talk about how he's still quite light on. He can play outside, but he's a good ball winner as well. He just likes going at it at ground level. Takes a few few sort of paddles to scoop it up, but he gets there in the end, and pretty shrewd pick from Brisbane again, and a nice little surprise.
I think the thing I most enjoy about Tunstall as well, sorry to butt in again, but he stepped up to every level of football that he played. So I think some of his best games were when he was playing for WA against SA this year.
Absolutely. And we'll get your thoughts on that trade. Port Adelaide, pick 55 for Carlton's future fourth. Michael, being the Carlton supporter, what do you reckon?
I haven't had much time to process that. I don't really know what to think of it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it makes too much of a difference at the moment. I'm not really sure why they went for it, but I don't know the thought process behind it, but cool.
Okay, great insight there, Michael. So we know that Port still have Jace Burgoyne on the board. Where do you sort of see his bid coming in at this stage?
After the Josh Fahey bid, I think.
We do have a bid coming in for the Western Bulldogs, as we say that, as it always is. Josh Fahey of the GWS Giants. We did talk about him. We thought he could have been as early as the 20s, so quite interesting that he's lasted that long. I think this will be a fairly straightforward process. I think it'll just be the GWS Giants using their pick 47. So, I think he's a great player coming off defence. Declan, you're the GWS fan. Give us a bit of an insight into him.
Yeah, a little bit of payback here for the Sam Darcy bid maybe earlier yesterday. But yeah, as you say, great player out of defence. And, I think the main eye-catching feature about Josh is his left boot and how long and penetrative it can be at times. And, his ability to play above his head as well, I think for his size is pretty good. So he'll be an exciting one to hopefully add. Taking our time though.
Yeah, does that concern you a little bit, Declan?
I know, I'm a little bit nervous.
No, I think they'll match it. I mean, we're hearing that the pick is in, so we'll see whether they have done that. It looks like they have. So, landing at the Giants gives them a little drive out of defence there. We know that they've probably got a few defenders who they might look to push to the midfield as well. You think that's a sort of reasoning behind a bonus in his selection?
Yeah, absolutely. You have guys like Lockie Ash, who, as good as he is in defence, probably has a lot of skills that you want to transfer to the midfield as much as possible with his speed. And we even saw him do a pretty good job on Darcy Paris this year in his brief run as a tagger. So bringing in Faye is going to allow us a bit more freedom with how we use Ash, and maybe Cumming pushes up the ground a bit more as well.
And small sample size, so we haven't seen much of him, Ed, but we were there at that AFL Academy game against Geelong VFL. So what do you think we've been able to see in him this year that really sort of had him touted for those picks in the 20s?
I mean, the one thing that really got me excited was how unselfish he was playing there. Like, he was there directing teammates. He was very vocal. I mean, you got a lot of kids there just too worried about trying to, win the ball and stand out. But he was thinking about not just himself but his teammates and getting them in the right spots and, attacking the contest hard. And funny enough, he's the one who is the one that stands out in that game by doing those things. So, I mean, it just goes to show, Darcy Wilmot going in the top 20 is another example. I mean, you can show all the flash you like, but if you're not willing to put in the hard yards and think about your teammates, you're not going to get drafted too early or at all.
Do you think that the Bulldogs need a player like Josh Fahey, or do you reckon they'll just kind of go next availability?
Yeah, probably next best on their list. I'm not going to accuse them of bidding out of spite, but it does feel a bit like that given how strong their running defender stocks are. I felt personally they probably need a key defender more than anything else, and it'll be interesting. There's a couple still available here, so they might go for one.
Could go for a mature ager. We know that Charlie Dean is still knocking about, so they've traded out Lewis Young. Charlie Dean probably not a like for like, admittedly, but he's one on the board. They could go for him.
So, as we alluded to, the Western Bulldogs have the next selection at 43. We'll just run through because there have been a few changes. We know that there's Essendon, Geelong, Essendon, Collingwood. The Giants will lose that pick, no doubt. So Collingwood might have a couple in a row there, which is quite fascinating. They might, hopefully they take a bit quicker than what Richmond did with their picks earlier. And then, of course, there's St Kilda, Essendon, Melbourne, and 4 players be done and won in the next few picks, if you like. Didn't have 3 picks coming up. Collingwood have 3 picks coming up. Do you think that there could be players that both those clubs want?
Yeah, you'd think so. Obviously, this range of the draft, and recruiters are watching all the same games, so naturally they're going to have a couple of targets that are pretty, I guess, mutual between them. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any sort of live trading games that go on there. I believe in that time that I've been speaking, Bulldogs have made their selection.
The Bulldogs have picked Arthur Jones.
Yeah, Arthur Jones out of Claremont, obviously a really talented forward. Someone who's got some high upside. He was a late inclusion to the combine late. Guys, we know he's got plenty of potential. He's really shot to fame this year. Give us a bit of an indication of what he'll add to that Bulldogs lineup.
I've used this phrase probably far too much, but running power. We'll go with it again. He's a really hard worker on the outside. So talk about sort of, the substance with the flair. Arthur Jones has that. He's not just a speedy wingman who just racks up outside ball. He can burn the outside, take running bounces, do all of that, but he's a hard worker essentially. So he can get the ball in defence and work all the way up into the forward 50, a real sort of meters gain player. And that's why he's so effective on the outside, I think. It's a great pick and one that sort of shows that players develop at different rates. So, he was one who really shot up at the end of the year, wasn't he, Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's one who's just got all those traits that you look for in your outside players, in your wingmen, especially in the modern game, the ones that, as you say, can work back and forward. I mean, he's quick, he's agile, he's got a lot of upside, and you've got to be really happy as a Bulldog supporter to get another really talented, young, quick player. They're the types of players that really stand out in big finals, the ones that can make a difference. So, he'll be one to look for in the next few years.
So we know next up is Adelaide with 44. We know there was a trade done with Essendon. So obviously the Crows have the next selection. They've tried to get ahead of a number of clubs here. So it'll be interesting to see whether they go local. Guys, Arlo Draper is still on the board. What's going on?
They're burning down the gaff. It's if it doesn't happen here, it never will. And Adelaide fans will be very cross, I'd say. Surprisingly, he sort of slid to this range. We're going to push, I think, the local selection unless you two have another idea. But for me, Arlo Draper just seems too obvious.
Yeah, if not someone who's local, it could be another player who's been really good in this year in Victoria, and Jamison Ballantyne as a wingman, a Rebels prospect. He's another one like we've been talking about with Amos and Tunstall have had to travel a fair way to play their footy. He's another one who's had to do a lot of driving around, and he's one I hope really gets onto a list, especially tonight. I mean, he's one who's worked really hard. He's got a lot of skill. He might be one to consider.
I'll stick local as well with Michael, but I'll go Cooper Murley. I think he's the one that I'd like to see go here. Again, maybe adds too many smalls in one draft, but I just think that he's got a bit of X factor. He's a hard worker, a bit like a Zach Butters, if you will.
Absolutely. Personally, Collingwood fan here at 47-48. If one of Arlo Draper or Cooper Murley can get there, there might be some reminiscence of a couple of years ago when they drafted Trent Bianco at about this selection. So it's going to be interesting, and I know Michael and Ed particularly know what I'm talking about there. So we know that Collingwood only have Nick Dacos thus far, obviously very good player at the top end. They've got a few selections coming up. We know they need a key position. Guys, talk us through a few of the good key position players that are still on the board.
Yeah, Anthony Caminiti is probably the one that comes to mind as maybe that bolter Victorian that hasn't had an overly high amount of exposure in the NAB League at least, but when he played NAB League, he stuck out and he really impressed. 5 goals against the Brisbane Lions Academy, and while they might not have been traditional key forward goals, someone's got to kick them, and he took the opportunities as they came. And with his athleticism, he's a really hard leader at the ball and has a good leap as well. So a good mark and could make a good focal point in the future.
Right, so with pick 44, Adelaide have selected Zach Taylor of the Calder Cannons, who I'll be honest, guys, I actually forgot he wasn't off the board. He was one I just assumed, got taken earlier, and that's an absolute outstanding selection. Grace, tell us a bit about him.
Yeah, so obviously standing at 180, his disposal rate is elite. He's great. His athleticism, his contested, his consistency, his versatility, all perfect. Boys, what do you think?
Yeah, pretty much nailed it. And he's sort of another one that maybe start of the year, he would have had a bit of interest, but I don't think anyone saw him maybe in that first round contention. He really played himself into that conversation. And you want to talk about the clean kicks of the draft, I think Taylor's right up there.
Yeah, I think probably very close behind Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller. I think Wanganeen-Miller, I'll try to say that quickly, is a little more damaging. But Taylor, I mean, he puts it in great areas. So his decision-making is really good. He knows how to get out of tight spots. He's pretty slippery as that small midfielder forward. So gets into a little bit of space, manufactures it, and then can hit a target going forward. So that's his strength. And good ball users going inside 50 is what a lot of good sides need. They've got some good wingmen now at Adelaide, so Zach Taylor's going to be another they can just chuck on a half-forward flank or through the midfield, and in time he'll be a really handy asset, I feel.
Yeah, later in the year as well, when a lot of Victorians were starting to really come into their seasons, and his disposal numbers, like his work rate was just phenomenal. I mean, he started the year as more of as that forward. He even showed a really nice leap when he's up forward as well. So he's got that to his game. But, I mean, his ability to find the ball and work hard in the midfield is really promising.
So we have seen a live trade. Collingwood have pulled the trigger on their future third round next year. And yes, they've traded with that for 47 and to get 45. And they have got Arlo Draper of the South Adelaide Football Club. And that is a very good selection. Grace, that's a pretty exciting player there. Midfielder, obviously out of South Adelaide, was tempted to go first round. He's a pretty good selection there for the Pies. I said I was going to get excited. So, going to cross over to the draft room. Go tell us about him, guys.
Oh, mate, just hand it over. Good for you, Pete. I'm happy. Arlo Draper, obviously, we've spoken about him heaps. As soon as he slipped past the local club there in Adelaide, Collingwood have gone bang. Probably did need that key forward. But again, we're talking about players who are too good to refuse. We saw Ben Hobbs go at 13 in the first round. He was too good for Essendon to refuse. And Collingwood, after they got Trent Bianco and sent Pete pulling his hamstring, doing jumps in the air, now they've done it again in this draft with Arlo Draper. So great selection. We know that he's injured at the moment as well, Declan. Might affect his first preseason.
Yeah, broken collarbone that he sustained in the WASA, the second game there, going for a contested ball, which, good, you want that in your players, and might affect him, but he has been saying that he's been on the bike, so he's been keeping up his endurance at the very least. And, a classy user going inside Collingwood's forward 50 is something that they're never going to complain about.
I mean, Collingwood really pulled the trigger last year as well with a lot of their picks. I mean, they've got some really good value in those top 30. Caleb Poulter, probably a similar player to Arlo Draper, is a very athletic, a taller player. I mean, Arlo is just an absolute bargain at this point. I mean, his upside is enormous. He's quick, he's clean. Up forward, his marking overhead as well is a real feature. I mean, I remember one game he played in the Sample under 18s as a 17-year-old. He was just everywhere up forward. He was so hard to stop. So there's quite a lot of upside with him, and a lot of the good young players that Collingwood have got now from last year and this year. And I mean, the future's starting to look bright again.
Someone please check on the Adelaide headquarters.
Yeah, so now we're up to Essendon with pick 46. Guys, I guess I'll throw to Ed in this scenario. Ed, who are you sort of looking for with this selection?
I was looking forward to Arlo Draper, I'll be perfectly honest. He would have been one that Essendon would definitely have picked if he was available, and unite him with another Draper and Sam Draper would have been really nice, but surely they may look at some small forward options. Is it Cooper Murley that could be one that they look at? Is it a outside player like a Luke Nankervis who has shown a lot of upside for this year? He's quite a lot to him, and maybe they go for a Ronald Fago Jr. From South Australia. He's another really nice outside type, although he's more of a wingman. He's still a very special player. Is it a Jamal Stretch from WA, who's that Halls Creek product, who's got a bit of upside? They lost Irving Mosquito, so they definitely need to look for those small forward options, but there isn't a lot left at the moment.
No, there certainly isn't. So we'll just quickly recap round 3 of the action. We've had Corey Warner from East Fremantle going to Sydney to join his brother Chad. We've got Brisbane selected James Tunstall of East Perth. Then GWS picked up Josh Fahey. They matched the bid coming from the Bulldogs, which was quite interesting because obviously, as we know, yesterday the Giants bid on Sam Darcy. So it was a bit of a return serve there. The Bulldogs then picked up Arthur Jones. And then back-to-back sliders, Zach Taylor and Arlo Draper going at 44-45. Guys, we know they were right up the top of the list. Who do you sort of see, or who's your sort of best player that you've got left on the board?
Trying to think of who's left. This is hard. Lockie Rankin might be one that's right up there. I think he was 39 on my board. So I guess in the range. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I've got him a little bit higher than that. So,
Yeah.
Rankin's kicking and his versatility is something that I think will add to a lot of clubs. Cooper Murley, who you may have noticed I've mentioned a few times tonight, I think that he's going to present some real value at this point in the draft, and his teammate Alistair Lord as well. That might surprise some that he's still on the board.
Yeah, and for me, Jamison Ballantyne from the Rebels, he's a good one. Another Rebels product in Charlie Molan. He's another really good player. He can play back, wing, forward. He'd be a coach's dream with his work rate and two-way running. But like the ones you guys have mentioned, they're certainly players that I would have pretty high up on my draft board. So we'll see what happens.
We've had a look through our 2021 AFL Draft Guide. Make sure you download it so you can too. Basically, all of the top 30, bar Jack Williams, has gone in the draft. So we'll come back to him in a moment because Essendon has made a selection. They've picked up Alistair Lord from Norwood, a real bolter in every sense of the word. We know exactly what he can kind of produce, and I think he's one that's really, really exciting. Ed, give us a bit of a rundown into him.
Yeah, so Bombers do like the bit of run off their half-back line. They had Connor McKenna there. They've got Nick Hine now, and Alistair Lord is exactly that type of player. He is just an absolute running machine off half-back. He breaks the lines. He's got a good penetrating kick. He got injured in the middle part of the year, so he missed a little bit of the state football for South Australia, but when he did get his opportunity, he did really well. He got a bit of the ball. He's certainly one that if he played a full year, I reckon he probably would have tried to push up into that top 30 range. So obviously they don't have a lot of younger, small defenders. I mean, in terms of their actual defenders, you've got Heppel, who is aging. Nick Hind, I mean, he is a mature age player. So having a small defender to really come through is probably a really astute pickup. And I mean, Lord Speed, he's an exciting player. So Bombers supporters will definitely gravitate to him.
Yeah, he's one who can take on the whole field, sort of. Like he'll just weave his way in and out of traffic and takes the game on. So that's a really exciting trait. And as Ed said, sort of suits Essendon's half back line, the sort of mould, the player that they look for. Hasn't played too much footy this year, but we know in those spurts that he got when he came back from injury, he was really effective, really damaging player too.
So, guys, I mentioned just before, I alluded to the fact that there was only one of the top 30 from our AFL Draft Guide in there. That's Jack Williams of East Fremantle. We know he's a key position player. There's maybe some clubs coming up here that might look for a key position player. Geelong up next could well do with a key position player, and we know Collingwood needs them too. Give us a bit of a rundown into Jack Williams and why he was in the top 30.
Yeah, I mean, he was one who was part of the AFL Academy as well. So came into the year pretty highly touted out of East Fremantle. We know he's really versatile as a tall as well. So you expect a guy who's about 195 centimetres to be good aerially, but he's also really clever with the way he uses that side of his game. So on the lead, he times it well. He's able to get to the right areas and uses his reach overhead. So he's a pretty good leader up forward. He can also rotate through the ruck. He has played a bit down back. We've seen him sort of float across and take intercept marks. So maybe there's some potential there for him to play and try out a few positions. So it'll be interesting to see whether a club can pick him up in this round. Still a few picks left, but we knew or probably predicted he might slide just a little bit.
Yeah, I do like his ball use as well. He's a very good user of the ball, but for a tall as well. I mean, he can spot up targets. He has a very nice kicking action, and that's something that could lend him to being off half back as well, especially when he's clean as well and he does compete. So, I mean, athletically, that's probably why he slid down this far. But he'd be one that you'd hope would still get picked up with his versatility.
Yeah, so plenty of interesting times to come. There has been a bid in the meantime for St Kilda, or towards St Kilda from Geelong, and that is Marcus Windhager. So Geelong, this is the pick that they swapped with Collingwood, and they've bid on Marcus Windhager. St Kilda NGA. We knew it was going to come at some stage, guys. Seems like a straightforward bid.
Yeah, I mean, we've said the same thing before with Mitch Owens. We think that they're going to match here. And having that sort of crop of familiar players, guys who have links to the club's really handy for the Saints as they sort of try to push back into finals contention. They've got a couple who might be able to come in and impact and just catch the eye and do something special. So Marcus Windhager is another. We think that that's going to be matched, and we're just sort of seeing it roll over. In the next few seconds, Pete and Grace, we should have that known for certain.
So we have seen that the St Kilda have matched the bid on Windhager. So Marcus Windhager, the Saints fans have got their wish. They've got Mitch Owens. They've got Marcus Windhager from the Sandringham Dragons. Grace, give us a bit of rundown into his game.
Yeah, so obviously being a midfielder / forward, he's really powerful. Versatility is great. Clean hands. His disposal rate is excellent. His consistency, pretty good. And yeah, boys, what do you think?
Yeah, a really good selection. And, maybe a week ago, you wouldn't have bet that Saints would end up taking both of their highly rated NGA prospects, but they've ended up with both of them here. And, we've touched on Owens, and Windhager has been a little bit unlucky with injury, even, in the lessened game time that he's gotten through COVID. He's gotten even less just through injury, but, powerful, pretty good user, and the ability to play as a mid and a forward is definitely something that every club wants.
Talk about basketball background. He's one who was very talented in that code. Got a scholarship. Obviously, he's a Haileybury College boy as well. And ended up doing really well with his footy. He's in an AFL system. So, he'll be a nice little addition for the Saints. A lot of upside, and that athleticism that we sort of touch on, he's got it in spades. He could be a really exciting midfielder, but that ability to hit the scoreboard, he did it a lot for school footy as well. I think that makes him a really good pick at 47.
Yeah, and for the Saints, that'll obviously put them out for this year's draft. But they've got three players that are very different as well. Like Windhager is more of your forward. Owens could be anything as a wing, a midfielder, forward, or half back, and then Wanganeen Malira on the wing on the outside as that high upside, very highly skilled type. So it's a very good mix for St Kilda, and they could come away really happy from this draft haul.
All right. So obviously we know now that Windhager's been matched, we actually have a selection, and this is a bolter, well and truly, coming out of the Eastern Ranges here with Geelong Cats selecting Flynn Kruger. Ed, you're the best one placed for this. You kind of had an idea this might happen, so give us a rundown into his game.
Yeah, so Kroger hasn't been able to play a lot of footy this year, obviously because of COVID, but also through injury as well. But there was one game he did get to play, which he played really well in, and that was against the Dandenong Stingrays. I mean, Declan and I got to visit there at Frankston, and he was really good for that midfield. He formed a good partnership with Max Hall and Jake Saligo, and I mean, he's a tough midfielder, pretty good overhead, seems to run really well both ways. And like Saligo, could probably play half forward, half back as well, as a very versatile type. So again, Geelong have taken a player that not many people had on the radar, but very often they've come out really well. I mean, Max Holmes, nobody would have thought he'd go at pick 20. He even got to debut this year after only playing one game in 2 years. So, I mean, this could be a really good pick when you're all is said and done. But Kroger, that's another one for the Eastern Rangers to go with. I mean, they've done all right today with Sonzi and Saligo. It's the midfielders from Eastern Rangers. They've done well.
Yeah, so, guys, with pick 49, Collingwood have selected Cooper Murley out of Norwood. I'm just going to throw to you guys. Go for it.
You can tell this man, he's a fan, isn't he? Peter Williams, very excited. The voice almost breaking with excitement there. And Cooper Murley, great pick. I know, Declan, that you were anticipating he might come in around this mark. And Collingwood will get two South Australians. They've packaged him up, sort of get rid of the go-home factor and add a lot of excitement to a really, really exciting young list.
Yeah, a couple of South Australians over the last couple of years as well. So building up just a little bit of a home away from home at that club. And, Adelaide didn't want to do it with the two local boys, so Collingwood decided that they would. And I can't speak highly enough about just Murley and what he does on the field. And I used the Zach Butters comparison before, and I do think that that's pretty accurate. And one thing that really impresses me with Murley is that in one of his comeback games this year from his, I think it was an ankle at the time, he looks like he just hadn't stopped playing. He was going in for hard contested balls against bigger players like opposition rucks and coming out on top. So I think that that's the type of player that Collingwood can expect him to be.
That's also the knock on him. So he is quite a small player. He broke his collarbone in his return game, within a couple of minutes. So whether he can play midfield is a bit of a question mark. We know he's good on the outside. He really runs forward at a good rate of knots. So how developable or how transferable his skills are to the next level, where he fits in, is going to be an interesting one to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's one I had as a top 20 prospect coming into the year. I mean, his form last year was incredible for Norwood. He was one of the best possession winners out of all the prospects that year. He just kept on winning the ball, showing his trademark speed and being able to go forward and kick goals. I mean, I feel he's a real bargain here for Collingwood. They've gotten two real good bargains here, and I mean, they've picked one of the best players in the draft with Dacos. They've got Murley, they've got Draper, and it's a very good year. I'm very sure you're excited, Pete.
Yeah, I'm just glad we got on camera just before that it would be great to get Draper and Murley, and they've got both. So I cannot complain whatsoever. I think if we can wrap up with a key forward there, maybe a Caminiti, job done, we can go home. That's very, very good. So obviously Collingwood now, they've picked up Draper, Murley, Dacos. I know they're capable of playing other positions. We know primarily, though, they're midfielders. Collingwood have built a lot of midfield depth. Do you feel like going forward they're going to have a lot of that depth? You've got your McRaes and your Poulters and whatnot from last year's draft. That's becoming a really young, deep midfield. Are you sort of excited about the potential that they could produce?
I think you're more excited about it, to be honest. To be honest, Pete. No, you're right. You're exactly right. I think a good trait with all of those players you mentioned, and the ones that they've brought in, is that they're dynamic and can play other positions. So they'll develop, players over time, and they develop at different rates. But they're going to have guys who can start forward or start on a wing or start in defence and then roll into the midfield. So once guys like Pendlebury, Taylor Adams sort of start to slow down, they've got Jack Crisp in there as well as a leader long term. They're going to be able to throw these new guys in there and they're going to make an impact. I think Dacos is one who could play midfield early on. He's just that good. But yeah, your Drapers and Murleys, they're ones who can start in other positions, and then down the line, they'll be Jets. They'll be ready. They've developed heaps, and they can impact in that midfield role as well.
So we've got a trade in here, which is quite interesting. St Kilda have traded with Melbourne to get their pick 51 in exchange for the D's future fourth rounder. Guys, we've had a few live trades. They haven't exactly been major blockbusters, we've got to admit, but what do you sort of make up of this?
Yeah, you've got to assume that St Kilda have a specific player in mind here to trade so close to the selection that was taking place. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see who that player is, because, to do it while Essendon is still selecting is a little bit risky, would you say?
Yeah, a little bit. We do have that next pick in, so I think we'll throw back. I'm pretty excited about this one.
All right, so Essendon with pick 50 have got Garrett McDonough out of the VFL. I remember he came through the Knights, I believe, and he's sort of come through that program. Bit of a surprise here, Michael. You're pretty excited about it. Give us a rundown.
Yeah, this one's a bit close to home. I actually played junior football with Garrett. He's from Richmond VFL, so a running half back. He re-entered the VFL system this year and really impressed, sort of picked up where he left off in that sort of top age season with the Knights, and he was one who was pretty unlucky to miss out, a bit light on, a few things to work on, but at his best, he's a really long, penetrative kick, if I can get that one out, and a bit of sort of dynamism. Stumbling on my words because I'm pretty excited. He can mark overhead, do a few different things as a wing or half back. So he's one who obviously impressed the Dons. And I'll get your thoughts on it as an Essendon supporter. But through that VFL, mature age, who can come in and be ready to go.
I mean, they would have been looking at him when they had Sam Durham also playing in the Richmond VFL. So obviously they like Durham, and he's got to even debut this year as a mid-season pick. So obviously they see him as someone who could even come in next year and may be able to make an impact. Because with Ben Hobbs coming in as a ready-made player, they want to get players who are ready to go next year, and they want that finals win. The Bombers, they are going to strive for bigger and better things next year, and this looks like it's going to be a pick to really go towards that.
So we know that St Kilda are up next. They traded with Melbourne for that selection. So just to recap before they goes in, we've got Corey Warner went to Sydney, James Tunstall to Brisbane, Josh Fade to GWS, Arthur Jones to the Bulldogs, Zach Taylor to Adelaide, Arlo Draper went to Collingwood, Alistair Lord went to Essendon, Marcus Windhager went to St Kilda after they matched it, and then Geelong picked Flynn Kruger, Collingwood went Cooper Murley, Essendon went Garrett McDonough, and now St Kilda have made their selection, the trade they brought up. They went with Oscar Adams of Glenelg. So Oscar Adams, obviously another tall prospect, and someone who's quite exciting. Someone who, played a lot of Sandful footy as well as, through South Australia. So guys, just tell us a bit about him.
I was speaking about Caminiti as an athletic tall, and Oscar Adams hits that pretty well, and maybe a little bit of an added benefit of having that versatility. He can play ruck, he can play back, and he can play forward, and he has done it at most levels of football. I believe for SA he had a run through all of those positions and really showed his wares, and obviously impressed St Kilda with the work that he's done over the year.
Yeah, might have been one that local clubs looked at too. I think his attack in the air is really good. So down back, that was noticeable. I think he really flew up balls, was able to either punch or take a mark. So that's one of his assets, and lands at St Kilda. Pretty handy addition there. We know those sort of intercept players are really important at the moment. They got one in Highmore recently, so he's another one who should come into that back line and do pretty well.
All right, so Collingwood are up next. We know they've picked up Nick Dacos, Arlo Draper, and Cooper Murley. They are coming up with another pick, and they've picked another South Australian, Harvey Harrison of North Adelaide. Really exciting talent, this kid. Someone who, has a lot of athletic traits, came to the fore with his combine. Guys, give us a bit of a rundown into what really catches the eye.
I'd argue that Harrison came into the fore a little bit earlier than that. His first SA game was against the Allies, I believe, and that was a really impressive game where he just sort of showed off that he's not just a midfielder, but he can play half-forward flank to a really good effect and use those athletic traits and his smart disposal to not just kick goals, but create them for his side. So, this is a really good selection for Collingwood and adds to, that dangerous forward to centre SA brigade they're building.
Yeah, he's actually a really good athlete across the board as well. So had some impressive combine testing results. He's got that sort of speed endurance mix, and whether he plays as a half forward or a midfielder or a wingman, there's a sort of good variety you can get out of him. I think in those sort of state games, he really showed his clean skills as well. So whether it be his handling or his ball use going forward, I think that was a really impressive side to his game that maybe we hadn't seen as much when he was playing for North Adelaide. So he managed to get a lot of the ball at Sandful under 18s level, but it sort of showed those different points when he was playing for his state.
All right, so that concludes round 3. We did just read out the names before. So that was Harvey Harrison from North Adelaide, rounding out the round for Collingwood at 52. So in that round, they finished up with Arlo Draper, Cooper Murley, Harvey Harrison. So they went all South Australians to join Nick Dacos. So they'll be done from here on, which is exciting for the Pies. Right now, we're about to come into the 4th round where Port Adelaide have 3 selections up. They've got to take at least 3. Obviously, they already took Josh Sinn yesterday. We think Jace Burgoyne will be in the next bunch, but they took Josh Sinn, and we chatted to him in the lead-up to this draft day before. So really exciting to see what he had to say. And if you listen carefully, you'll be able to give a bit of a hint that he was going to Port Adelaide. So we'll take it away with Josh Sinn interview.
Hello and welcome to another very special video edition for Rookie Me Central. I'm Michael Alvaro. Today I'm joined by Josh Sinn from the Sandringham Dragons. How are you today, mate?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Very good. Great to have you in. A pretty big treat, only a day out from the national draft. How are the nerves?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I've kept myself pretty distracted over the last, 7 days. Off to play basketball after this. So, just finding, things to do to keep me busy.
Absolutely. And you would have had uni exams, I assume, pretty recently as well. How's the sort of year been with that? How you're handling everything?
Yeah, it's been, a blessing in disguise. Finishing school last year, I haven't really had too much to worry about. And with uni as well, it's been a little bit of a challenge getting used to it all online. But at the same time, I'm so glad it's over. And exams went really positively as well.
Yeah, how's everyone else going? Are they sort of talking to you about their exams and trying to get a bit of advice off you of how you dealt with it?
Yeah, definitely trying to find, the balance between getting your training in and then also getting your study in as well. So, I've had a couple people talk to me. I mean, I remember talking to Campbell Chesser last year about subject selections and what subjects you should be doing. So, I've been able to offer some advice here and there.
Yeah, and I guess it plays into your leadership there, captain at the Dragons as well. But on field, how would you assess your year? You probably, probably a bit frustrating, to be honest. Had a few injuries, the disruptions, and you weren't able to, complete the year. How do you think you went?
Yeah, definitely it was frustrating. But at the same time, I think I was able to show glimpses of what I am capable of. I think just personally, these past, 3 months where I've been able to train and really, focus in on my craft. It's been, a little bit of a blessing that I've been having that time, to train with Jackson Cornberg and so forth. So, yeah, it's been, disappointing, but at the same time, being injured, it opened so many new doors for me, and I can't thank Jacko enough. Got me into, more roles inside the four walls of the club. I took on opposition analysis for a couple of weeks, and then on-field roles on the sideline, just looking after players, giving some advice here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was good to see you on the sidelines doing that as well, pretty vocal. Do you think you found your top form at all this year? Do you think you hit a peak? Because you showed plenty as an under-16. You probably touted as a top 5 pick. Do you think you're able to show that again?
No, I don't think so at all. And I think what I've been able to, improve on over the past 20 months, 30 months, I just haven't been able to, string together. I felt like after that Metro game, I was going to start to really put, my foot down and really start to, make a case for myself to really push myself up the rankings. But at the same time, I think that it's, my best is yet to come, and I think that what's made me so exciting.
Yeah, and you got injured late in that game, unfortunately, but you're in pretty good nick, it looked like. How are you now? Are you pretty much free of injury and getting back to full health?
Yeah, I'm full health at the moment, so I've been full training for probably the past 2 months now. So it's been good. We've had a group of us Sandy Dragons boys down at Trevor Barker, training with Jacko and Tarkin Lockyer. So we've been pretty much full training, full going at it. So it's been good fun.
Awesome. Yeah, that does sound really good. Obviously, you had that training day as well with all the Vics together. Must have been good to come together, not just the Sandy boys, but everyone else from the region. Yeah,
I think, the training wasn't too hard at all. I think it was probably 3Ks in total, but I think just the general vibe and energy was just, it was like a kid on Christmas rocking up to training. I was just so excited to be able to see everyone's again. I think at the same time, we all knew that there was so much attention around all of us, all the recruiters were there was heaps of media, but I think everyone was pretty quick to put it aside and just really enjoy each other's company and understand that, the next 2 weeks, maybe, some people may be really happy and some people may be really disappointed, but it's just about enjoying the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of where you fit in at the next level, you've played plenty of positions, and the trigger was pulled pretty early on you playing midfield this year. Is that where you see yourself long term, or are you going to develop, off half back on a wing early on?
Yeah, I think early on I could probably start and play off half back, but I think with my athletic attributes, I think I can play through the middle quite early. I think with my breakaway speed, I find that, I can really make a difference in there and, put separation on my opponents quite quickly. So I feel like I can make an impact in the middle quite early as well. So, I think I can even roll forward if need be. I think my overhead marking's quite solid, and just being able to break away from players and get on the lead as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a bunch of stuff there, and it's pretty easy to see once you want that, those are your strengths. So on the flip side, have you had a lot of feedback on what you need to work on?
Yeah, definitely. I think my biggest, weakness or improvement is definitely my endurance at the moment. And it's something I've always had to keep knocking on, for the past 3 or 4 years. And it's kind of gotten to a point where it's just average. But for me, if I want to become a midfielder, I have to be elite. And so I'm pretty grateful. I've got so many great resources around me. Like I've got Finlay McRae, who came 4th in Collingwood's 2K yesterday, and I've got Nick Cox, who won Essendon's 2K last year. So I've got so many excellent resources around me that are really helping me, improve my fitness day by day.
Yeah. Jackson Cornberg described you as the best technical kick at Sandringham. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think my kicking mechanics is very sound. I've kind of always had those kicking mechanics. It's kind of that execution at, full sprint, which has just let me down this year. And it's something that, with development, it's just gotten a lot better significantly over the last 3 months. That's something that Jack and I have been constantly knuckling down on. So, I certainly do think that my kicking is, I hold my kicking in very high regard.
In terms of chats with clubs, have you spoken to anyone lately, the last few days? And do you have any sort of idea what range you'll be in, what sort of clubs will be most interested?
Yeah, that's still something I try not to think about it too much, because then you're just always thinking about it. But yeah, I've had a couple meetings with some clubs recently, including Brisbane and Port Adelaide and Essendon, and I think it's just exciting. I don't really care at all where I go, to be honest. I just really want to make it onto an AFL list, and whether that be in Victoria or it be in another state, I think it's just the opportunity that I have at hand is so exciting. It'd be seriously rude of me not to embrace, whichever club, puts their faith in me to, put in the hard yards and make an impact.
Yeah. Which club do you support?
I'm a Carlton supporter.
Good man. So you said before it was a bit like Christmas, like draft day. Is that because you are a Carlton fan and most of our success comes post-season?
Yes. We have missed out, or particularly me, I've missed out on, any sort of success through Carlton. I think Carlton's had nearly 5 number 1 picks in the past 16 years or something. So yeah, we get pretty excited over post-season. But I mean, now there's Carlton's first pick is outside the first round, which is the first time in a very long time. So it's a bit different for Carlton supporters.
Yeah, well, we've had a few picks roll in of late while you were watching that very, very nice interview in the break. We had Jai Sarong, pick 53 Hawthorn. We'll start off with that. They snuck in just in front of Fremantle and a pretty talented player at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's shown a lot of versatility this year. So he's naturally more of a high half forward at that 192, 193 centimetre mark. But he's been shown an ability to go for the midfield, even go off half back for stints and look really good. He's a very fit player. He's very athletic, very good leap. And, it's a good fit for Hawthorn as well, like another taller player up forward that can help develop. I mean, Fremantle would have definitely wanted to pair him up with his brother and would have been nice. But, he gets to stay in Victoria as well. I'm sure the Sarong family would be pretty happy to have him still here. So, yeah, that's a very good pickup for them.
And I'll just run through the next few picks quickly. Fremantle took their NGA product, Eric Benning from Claremont at pick 54. And then Port Adelaide had 2 on the board. Obviously, Hugh Jackson was the first one, a local boy midfielder. And then Dante Vizentini, a Sandringham Dragons tall, who can play on all 3 lines. And we might throw back to Grace and Peter as we see a few passes come in.
Yeah, Hawthorn and St Kilda have both passed. Now, St Kilda had back-to-back picks, so we presume this will also be a pass, unless there's going to be a live trade done. So, guys, what we might start to do is we'll start throwing you some teams and rating their draft haul, the ones that have sort of potentially finished now, obviously. What we're going to go with, we'll start with the ones that just passed. So, Hawthorn, you just mentioned then they picked up Jai Sarong, but otherwise, they've picked up Josh Ward, Sam Butler, and Connor McDonald. How do you sort of rate those selections, and where do you sort of see them all fitting in? Perhaps are they going to be ready early on, or how do you sort of rate their overall haul?
Yeah, well, that's a bang, bang, bang with those first 3 picks for your midfield rebuild, I think. And, McDonald I can see playing early. I think Ward, with his fitness, should play early. And Butler may not start through the midfield. He might not get too much time going through there, but I do imagine he'll play pretty early as a forward as well. So it's a really good little bit of injection of youth that they've brought in. And then obviously Sarong is a taller prospect and maybe one that will take a little bit of time. There's, that's the point in the draft where you take those sorts of players. And I think it's one of the better ones that was available.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Ed spoke about it just before. He's a player that they can develop as they like. So we saw him play, as a sort of 193 centimetre player with great athleticism, saw him play in midfield and then at either end of the ground. He was thrown around a bit, wasn't in the strongest NAB League side, but was able to sort of showcase his best strengths, and that's all you want. So he's got a lot that Hawthorn can get out of him. And as Declan said there, they've hit just a few different points with their haul overall. So they get that pure midfielder, they get a mid forward, and then another sort of in that mould, but in a different sort of player. And then Sarong rounded out, late pick, high upside. So I think they've done really well.
Yeah, sweet. So Brisbane picked up Darcy Wilmot, Kyle Lohman, and James Tunstall. What do you guys think about them?
Yeah, a really good hand. Lohman might be considered a reach, but I know, Ed, you had him pretty high. And, you look at what he does bring to the table as sort of a really energetic and exciting athlete in the forward half and along the wing. And it's hard to deny that it's one that should get fans pretty excited. And, we spoke about last night, he's a boom or bust, but, we're hoping for more likely of a boom. And Darcy Wilmot doesn't get much better as sort of a lockdown defender goes that can also rebound. And then Tunstall we spoke about tonight when he was selected, just a really good hard at it midfielder with a bit of versatility in how he approaches the game.
So we've had a selection at pick 60. West Coast have picked up Jack Williams of East Fremantle. Obviously key position player. Grace, give us a bit about him.
Yeah, sweet. So obviously he's a ruck, so he's really good at overhead marking and versatility, which is really good to have as a ruck, versatility. Goal kicking, leading patterns, and work rate is excellent. Boys, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a high value selection. So, a young tall who has really good traits and versatility. Getting him at pick 57 when he was rated, as an AFL Academy prospect, guy who could have been a top 30 pick at one stage. West Coast would be stoked. And, you look at that local flavour that they've got, Brady Hoff, Rhett Bazzo, Arthur Jones. Sorry, not Arthur Jones, but Jack Williams as well. Go nuts. That's a great sort of crop of local guys that they can rely on to stay there and develop over time as well.
Absolutely. So, as we know, Fremantle are now done. During that little break we had before when we chatted to Josh Sinn, we had the pick of Eric Benning, which is, of course, Fremantle's NGA. They've also, been able to pass now, so that'll be it for Fremantle. Along with Eric Benning, they've also, of course, had that really busy period. They had Jai Amos, Neil Erasmus with 8 and 10, and Matthew Johnson as well. Guys, what do you sort of rate of that? They had a lot of high picks, and they've sort of stuck close to home.
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be, pretty local with either Amos or Erasmus at those first picks. And they've managed to, fit that key area they needed to do. They need some height in their young players. And Jai Amos, he's definitely what that 195 centimetre mark, key forward, another area that they really needed to bolster. I mean, Erasmus and Johnson, the two best West Australian midfielders in the draft, and they're tall, they're athletic, they're very, very good players. And then Eric Benning a bit later on, another tall. They need another tall as well, and he can, play forward and go for the ruck. He's probably going to take a little bit of time, but he's certainly one who's got a lot of upside and could really be anything. But yeah, Erasmus is one in particular that I really rate, and I think he could end up being that sort of Hugh McCluggage type player. He's not your big inside bull, but he's just damaging when he gets the ball. He can go forward, he can take marks. Another one, he's like probably a Tim Taranto as well. So yeah, he's going to be a really good player for them.
I think the exciting thing as well from a Fremantle perspective is, with the exception of Jesse Motlop getting taken before pick 40, this would have been their perfect idea of a draft hand, I think, is, walking away with three of arguably the three best WA prospects in the pool this year, and not having to trade up for that third one. It's a really good result.
And with pick 62, Sydney have got an absolute steal there in Lockie Rankin of the Oakley Chargers. Grace, give us a bit of a rundown into his profile.
Yeah, so obviously his disposals and versatility is at an elite level. Obviously really great at contested pretty much everything. Consistency is excellent. Athleticism, excellent. Pretty much a well-rounded footballer.
Declan, I know you're a huge fan, so give us a rundown into, I guess, the way he'll fit in at Sydney and what you think of the selection.
You're a huge fan as well, Pete, so I'll try and do you justice here. I mentioned earlier that his kicking is just elite, and maybe not spoken about as highly as guys like Wanganeen Miller or Taylor, because he maybe wasn't in the frame for a top 20 pick, but I'd argue that he's just as good as those two, and his versatility is just, immense. He can play backline really well, forward line really well, and, he's got that capability to push onto the wings long term.
Yeah, it was great seeing him, after his under-16s campaign, which was the last time we had seen him before this year. He was a sort of dashing halfback or wingman, and he really developed his game. We saw him round one against Sandringham. He was playing half forward. He was on Josh Sinn. He kicked 2 really early goals, and that set the tone for his season. So we saw his clean skills. We saw his ability to play on all three lines this year. And he was probably a bit hidden, given he didn't play as much NAB League, so he played a bit of APS footy as well. So probably that sort of form wasn't shown to everyone. But yeah, I mean, what a player and a really good value pick at 58 for the Swans.
I think the one disappointing part is he's not a left footer. I mean, they've gone with the left footers with the first few picks, and now they've got Rankin. But I mean, left footers are there for their kicking, and Rankin, he is one of the better kicks in the draft. When he did play down back in the for his school level for Caulfield, he was the one taking kickouts, and he just would barely miss a target, kicking 50 metres quite easily. He's a very special player.
So, boys, what do you think of Sydney's fondness towards redheads with Lachlan Rankin and Matthew Roberts?
That's a great pickup, Grace. Lockie Rankin, Matt Roberts, we love a redhead. Hopefully they're running hot for the Swans for years to come. Obviously, I don't think they would have targeted them per se, but
I mean, they are called the Bloods, but
no, that's true. I guess it suits. So good job lightening us up a little bit there, Grace.
Guys, while we're still waiting for the next selection, we've got Collingwood are all done and dusted for today. They were after 4 players. They've picked up Nick Dacos, Arlo Draper, Cooper Murley, and Harvey Harrison. Just give us a bit of a rundown into that crop. Obviously, they've really targeted the midfield there. So I know we spoke about them before, but now that they're done, just give a bit of a rundown where you think they might fit and who might start from round 1.
Yeah, I mean, what a crop. I know you can't get enough of it, Pete. You just want to continue to talk about it and go over it as a Collingwood fan. But yeah, Nick Dacos starting it off. What a player. At pick 4, obviously that's great value for Collingwood, given he could have been number 1, really. That wouldn't have been out of place. Arlo Draper, 45. Great value. Cooper Murley, the same. And then Harvey Harrison. So 3 South Aussies. If Adelaide wasn't going to take him, Collingwood were going to pounce. So what a great haul and a dynamic one, and just players that can develop in different positions. So I think Collingwood are in really good stead here with their young list.
So we've got a pick in. It's a father-son selection North Melbourne have picked up Jackson Archer, obviously with their last selection. They did nominate him pre-draft. He was one of the three father sons from Victoria, along with Sam Darcy and Nick Dacos. So they've picked him up with pick 64, so that'll be North done. But give us a bit of a rundown into Jackson Archer, Grace.
Yeah, so boys, any thoughts?
Yeah. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree for Jackson Archer, to be honest. He's one who is defence first, as Grace alluded to there. So loves to lock down his opposition. We saw there was a game against Murray Bushrangers where he and Darcy Wilmot were trying their best to lock down Josh Rochelle, who was running an absolutely riot. And if Josh Rochelle was taking a mark, Jackson Archer was punching the ground. He was frustrated and trying to get in people's faces. So that's the kind of competitor he is, and that's what he's going to bring to North Melbourne. Excuse me. So yeah, a good pick. Another Northern Knight getting on off the board, and we knew it was going to happen. So yeah, good for Roos fans.
So from one father-son to another father-son, Port Adelaide with pick 65 have selected Jace Burgoyne. So no bid required for him. That's fantastic work for the Power. Grace, Jace Burgoyne, what can you tell us?
Yeah, so obviously really good with his accumulation, clean skills, great decision making. I think that's reflected upon his disposals with 28.8 disposals in the SNFA under 18s 21. So I think that really reflects pretty much his pros.
Absolutely. Guys, we thought he might come a bit earlier. What do you kind of think?
Yeah, Port Adelaide would 100% be as happy as he can be with this. Obviously, maybe just drifted a bit through the year. A little bit of inconsistencies at times, and maybe some question marks on his hurt factor, despite getting so much of the ball. But I think he has such good footy IQ, and he just knows how to play wherever you put him on the ground. So at pick 60, it's in every definition of the word a bargain.
Yeah, I'd agree. Obviously, it was pretty highly touted. Had a really good couple of years at Sanford under 18s level, and even got to crack the league grade on a little bit of a trial with Port Adelaide. So he's familiar with the colours. He's familiar with the environment, and obviously nominating just after his brother was delisted by the Power was probably a good move, and Port Adelaide get him at a really no cost effectively. So yeah, good for both parties.
So we have another pick in. So Western Bulldogs, you may have forgotten about them because they picked up Sam Darcy and then had all their picks cleared out. But they're back in the action. And with pick 66, they've picked up Luke Cleary from the Sandringham Dragons. Grace, give us a rundown into him.
Yeah, so obviously really good positioning around the field. Kicking efficiency, also really, really good. Boys, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, 19-year-old and came back to the Sandringham Dragons after missing out on his draft age year last year due to COVID, and he's one that earned that combine invite last year off of limited football, and that may have surprised some. And I think round one came around this year, and immediately you knew exactly why he was invited. He's got a really good kick, a really good positioning behind the ball, and despite being the 189, he might be 190 now. He can play above his height, maybe not necessarily in a true key position mould, but really strong above his head, and he's not afraid to drift across packs or other contests to impact and intercept and then get the ball moving quickly.
I think he's the 8th Sandringham Dragon off the board as well. So obviously a footy factory over there. They do it every year. And he's one I know, Ed, you saw him pre-season last year. Obviously we didn't get that season, but he's gone on now to show just why he was so highly touted.
Yeah, he's got quite a lot of composure from half back, and that's one of his good things. He's clean. He makes the right decisions a lot of the time. He'll be the one who plays on talls and smalls at that height, and he'll be a dependable player. I mean, he's the type of defender that is a defender that you want in the modern game, who can will go when it's his turn. He can play on talls and smalls. He can rebound. He can shut down. So a very reliable player.
Wait, so with North Melbourne's picks, they have chosen Jason Horne-Francis, Josh Goder, Paul Curtis, Miller Bergen, and Jackson Archer. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, well, Jason Horne-Francis was one that you locked in probably 18 months ago even for the pick one spot. So wasn't too much of a shock. And, North Melbourne have got a real almost franchise player. It's more of an American term, but he does have that sort of air about him where he wants to win and he wants the ball and he wants the spotlight, and everything he's said in the media so far this year has sort of indicated that he wanted to be pick one, he wanted to be at North Melbourne, and I think he'll thrive off that sort of pressure. Then Goda, he's someone that maybe a month or two ago you thought might have been in top 10 considerations, so to get him in the 20s is an absolute bargain. And then Curtis obviously feels a need, and to get Archer as well is really good.
All right. We have a pick in, and it's West Coast again going local. The WA teams have gone really local. So they've selected Greg Clark, the mature ager out of Subiaco. They got him via a trade from Port. They received pick 67 from Port, who are obviously done, and have traded their future fourth rounder for him. So Greg Clark, obviously, he's a 24-year-old. Mature ager, as we said. So Grace, give us a rundown into his game.
Yeah, so obviously really good with his inside game, being an inside midfielder. Accumulation really, really good, which is all you can really hope for a mid inside. So boys, what's your thought about that?
Yeah, so he was very highly touted in his draft year, and if I recall correctly, he was even the captain of the WA state side at that time, and he was more of an outside type. He was more on the wings and off half back, and has taken a few years to really improve on his contested side, and that really came this year. I mean, he was dominating this year for Subiaco, and even going forward and kicking goals. He was odd exclusion for the mid-season draft. He didn't nominate for the mid-season draft. Obviously, West Coast would have been one of the clubs telling him, hey, we're probably likely to pick you up. Maybe you want to wait out a bit and we have a better chance of picking you up. And he's a really good pick here. That's adding more to their midfield depth, what they really needed to do, West Coast.
All right. So obviously with that selection, Greg Clark, we now have Adelaide coming up, who have passed with pick 68. So that's a pass on the board. So Adelaide are passed. Collingwood has passed. So we're getting a lot of passes here. We've already spoken about Brisbane, Hawthorn, Fremantle, and Collingwood. So what we might do now is take a look at St Kilda's Hall. Guys, Nazaya Wanganeen-Malira, Mitch Owens, Marcus Windhager. We kind of did touch on them earlier, but just to wrap up, since we're doing all the clubs, where do you sort of see them fitting? Who plays round one? How long do they sort of take to get into the lineup?
I think Nasai Wanganeen-Milera, I mean, it's probably an easy thing to say. He's probably the one that is going to play round one, if any, out of that lot. Mitch Owens probably next in line, and then Windhager. So naturally, they've landed in those sort of consecutive selections. So Wanganeen-Milera, we know he's played senior football. Mitch Owens has got the size, the running capacity to sort of suit modern day football and slot right in. And then Marcus Windhager is probably your more long-term option. So he's probably got to develop that running capacity. He's obviously had a couple of injuries as well. He had the knee injury last year. Now his back's playing up. So I think in that order, that's where they'd fit in and how they'd fit in.
All right. So we'll keep up with our movement as we're getting more passes. North Melbourne have passed, Richmond have passed, and of course St Kilda have passed again. We know they're already out. So we're going to move on to Melbourne now. They picked up Jacob Van Rooyen and Blake Howes. Guys, we thought there might be a Woden bid coming. It sounds like they're going to the rookie draft. Give us a bit of a rundown into Melbourne's two selections and I guess what that means.
Go for it, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Melbourne are probably a team that didn't need any specific sort of player. They just wanted to get the best available, given that they did win the flag. And they've done that with two really quality players. Van Rooyen, who, as a tall utility, there's not many better going around in the draft that can play both roles to such a high level. And, we've spoken about his reading of the game from the back line, and then just his work rate and his smarts to repeat lead in the forward line as well to get marks, and his ability to take a contested grab as well, really impressive. And then Blake Howes, athleticism, which sort of matches what they've gone through for in recent years, especially the Sandringham Dragons products, and that ability to play forward and wing, and he's had some runs on the back line as well. He's a nice versatile option and brings a lot that, you see in current Melbourne players that they value highly.
I
Yeah,
think,
sorry,
well,
Michael.
go on.
They took Fraser Rosman last year as well, who is another Sandringham Dragons type, a very similar type as well as your half forward, wingman, and athletic, really good fitness. So, I mean, they're covering their bases there with those two types of players, Michael.
Yeah, well, I think you sort of have touched on what I was going to, but they've got players that can push the starting 22. So Jacob Van Rooyen will put pressure on their talls who are there already and established, or at least trying to do so. And then Blake Howes is one who will be that long-term development type. But then you can get someone like Fraser Rosman, who's a very similar type, who can then push into the starting 22 as well. So they're starting to get that squad competitiveness up. They're obviously a very strong 22 or 25, and just filling out really nicely now with that crop as well.
Perfect. So next we have Richmond's picks. We have Josh Gibcus, Tom Brown, Tyler Sonsi, and Sam Banks. What do you guys think about them?
Well, I mean, I feel they've gotten an absolute steal with Tyler Sonsi that far. I mean, I would have taken him, at pick 9 or at pick 17 with his talent. But, there are other picks as well they were able to do the day with, like Sam Banks. I mean, he's run off half back is really good. He's a very good kick of the ball. You could say they probably went a bit too hard with their defenders. I mean, they've got Gibcus, they've got Brown, and Sam Banks is another one. But they're all very good players. I mean, Judson Clark as well, finally. He's an electric small forward. He's got that surge mentality. He takes the game on. He can kick goals. I mean, he's one who really excites me. So when you've got the likes of Sonsi and Judson Clark, who I have in my top 20, and you're getting them in the the low 20s, you're done so well. And I mean, with Josh Gibcus, they've arguably got one of the most athletic key position players of the pool, and he could be anything. He could be an absolute star. I mean, they've lost Alex Rance, and I know Noah Bolter's been put into that position, but having a little bit of someone coming through as well in Josh Gibcus, I mean, it just makes them so dangerous.
Absolutely. So we're going to now run through a GWS. They had the 3 selections: Finn Callahan, Leclerc, and Josh Fay. Declan, you're the GWS man. Give us a rundown what you think about those.
Yeah, excellent selections. I spoke about it a lot last night. Finn Callahan, deservedly so, has sort of earned the title as the unanimous, second best open pool player. And no surprise that we've gone there. And there were different players rumoured, but at the end of the day, you have pick 2. You pick the player that you think is the most deserving talent-wise rather than anything else. And he'll add something different to our midfield. He's got that height, he's got that class, he's got that speed. So he could be one that plays pretty early next year, I imagine. Leclerc probably has a little bit of development, especially size-wise, left in him just to play that key position post. But, he's another exciting one considering our aging key defender stocks and probably that need that we had for a young key defender to come in as well. That's an exciting one to see paired with Sam Taylor long-term. And then Faye, that one was always going to happen, I think, as long as we got those first 2 picks in. And the fact that it happened in the 40s is just an advantage to get a player of his quality that, really should play, pretty early, depending on what we want to do with the rest of our medium defenders. So very exciting hand to pull in.
Absolutely. So it looks like a lot of teams are passing now. So what we might do is we'll just quickly look at some of the other teams as we go through who might have a few selections. So at this stage, it looks like Carlton and Gold Coast, or certainly Carlton, have only picked up Jesse Motlop. Michael, they've already had a pass. What do you kind of think? What's Carlton's thinking? What are they going to do in terms of list spots if they're already passing?
Yeah, I'm pretty bored actually as a Carlton supporter. Usually this is Christmas for us, given we haven't had too much success during the season. So hoping we win the cup next year then. But Jesse Motlop, pick 27, great get. I think it suits the need really well. Obviously, he's played a lot of senior football already. I think he's got the confidence to really step in at senior level. And, we've got Eddie Betts out the door. Now Jesse Motlop, he's one who could potentially step straight into that role. So, really happy to get him. Just a pure small forward who can, hit the scoreboard, and just create a bit of havoc inside 50. I think that sort of impact, that burst, is something that we're really lacking. So, happy to get him in. And Who knows? I mean, we've lost Liam Jones, so we're probably going to go to the rookie draft, see what's left over and probably pick up a key defender or, just see what we can shuffle around in the key position posts. That'd probably be the next area. If not, midfielders and around the square sort of players that have that running power.
Yeah, players like Charlie Dean and Noah Pecoraro as mature age defenders, they're still on the board, so they might be ones they look at.
So that was Carlton with their one selection. Essendon, they picked up Ben Hobbs, Alistair Lord, and Garrett McDonough. Ed, you're the Essendon supporter. Give us a rundown into your thoughts on those selections.
Yeah, I mean, the Bombers would have been stoked to have Ben Hobbs fall down that far. I mean, for a lot of people, and especially for me, he's a top 5 talent. He's going to be a star midfielder of the next 10 years for the Bombers. Oozes leadership. He's a contested beast. He's exactly what the Essendon midfield really need. They've got a lot of that outside class, but they really need someone to really win those contested possessions, and Ben Hobbs is exactly that type of player. And later on, they've obviously looked at a Nick Hine replacement for years to come, and that's Alistair Lord, who's an absolute speedster off halfback. He takes the game on at every opportunity. Got a nice penetrating kick as well, so he's got a bit of upside to him. And although I don't know too much about Madonna, I think Michael might be able to comment a little bit more for the Bomber supporters on what type of player he is.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of the same sort of. He could play off halfback, off a wing, maybe even roll into midfield, but had a really good season for Richmond's VFL side. So that's a pretty high level to play at. And I think he's one now he's my age, so he's 25. He's got a few years under his belt, come back into that VFL system and impressed enough to sort of justify that hype around him as a top ager all those years ago. So he's sort of going to come into his prime now and could become that sort of another running halfback that Essendon fans will enjoy.
With pick 78, Gold Coast have picked Charlie Constable.
Yeah, Charlie Constable, Geelong Cats. So that's great for him. Guys, I think the very obvious elephant in the room here is they lost Hugh Greenwood. He fills the exact Hugh Greenwood role. I think this is a massive win, not just for Gold Coast, but for Charlie Constable, because, let's be honest, he didn't get the crack at Geelong. He goes to a lower team, a team that is crying out for a contested ball winner now. Greenwood's gone. You like this move?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's one that was very unlucky at Geelong. I think the game sort of moved a little in a different direction to what his role is. So probably not looking at those tall, slower inside ball winners. Obviously, he's got good hands and he's got good endurance as well, but it's probably not what a lot of clubs are after. But given Gold Coast has lost out on Hugh Greenwood there with that absolute debacle, they've got in Charlie Constable, who was a bit of a shock to listing. So, good get and good for Charlie Constable. I think he's a guy who probably deserved another chance. So good on him. Pretty happy to see him get that second shot.
Sweet. So Adelaide's team, we've got Josh Rochelle, Jake Saligo, and Zach Taylor. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, a bit of a smaller draft for Adelaide, and it's probably something that we commented on a little bit. But three very different types of smalls, I feel. So Rochelle, we speak about X factor and the ability to create something from nothing, and that's Rochelle to a T. And he's going to be one that kicks goals. He's going to love a celebration as well, and he might even be one that sort of polarises opposition fans. But I think that's the type of player that the Crows have been crying out for, and the one that they would have wanted. Saligo, you talk about work rate and inside ball winning. He brings that. He's a hard tackler. Ferocious, just doesn't care who the opponent is. He's going to give them a red hot crack and really challenge them. And then Taylor, spoken about, one of the best kicks in the draft class. He just knows how to play multiple different roles and, really good IQ. And I think for his size, probably a decent inside player as well. So he's not going to be one that's limited to playing a half forward flank or a wing at the next level, I don't think.
And what I'll add to that is that obviously you get the flair in Josh Rochelle, the individual brilliance and all that. But on your flanks, you get Saligo and Taylor, who are really honest workers as well. So they're guys who are young, but they're going to put in a shift for the side. I think in a young team that's looking to rebuild pretty quickly, having those two players who are going to be reliable and going to give their all and win a fair amount of ball each week, that's going to be really valuable for them.
I mean, they haven't gone with the South Australians that a lot of people thought they would, but with Saligo and Taylor, they've both played Vic Metro together as well. So they'll have some sort of rapport there. So obviously getting 3 Victorians in, I mean, there is also the home factor, but if you can really set a tone for these young guys coming through and they can start developing together, they might want to stick around and maybe Adelaide have that bit of success in the next 3 to 4 years, and it could really set them up.
All right. So the next team, we've gone from Adelaide to their cross-state rivals in Port Adelaide. They picked up Josh Sinn, Hugh Jackson, Dante Visentini, and Jace Burgoyne. Interesting fact about them, obviously Josh Sinn and Dante Visentini reminds a little of Miles Bergman and Ollie Lord. Same club, same sort of players, I guess, if you really want to put it that way. But Port's quartet of picks, what do you reckon?
I really like it. Obviously, they traded up, got a bit busy on night one, and got Josh Sinn through the door. So that was a good get for them, good bit of business. And they were pretty busy at the trade table on both nights. So they ended up with a few late picks. Obviously, we knew the father-son, Jace Burgoyne, was going to get to him, and he did. So in his own right, he adds a bit of class. He's got a good turn of speed, good agility, and good ball skills as well. And then in between those 2 picks, obviously Hugh Jackson, the local boy, why not choose a local who's sort of got a little bit of speed away from the contest and could have something about him. He showed a lot in the early stages of the Sanford Under-18 season. And Dante Visentini, like you say, another Sandy Dragons product. They picked up Ollie Lord. They had Miles Bergman. And I think Sinn is a little bit similar to Bergman in his athleticism and potential to play a few positions. And Dante Visentini has that versatility as well, but he's a tall, so can play on each line. He's really aggressive. So I think, like Ollie Lord, they like talls that have a bit of grunt about them, that are not afraid to throw their weight around. And, the big boys at Sandy have obviously been really good over the last few years, and Visentini's another one of them.
And in between all these passes, we have another pick. So only the second pick in about 10 selections. Geelong have remained local, which is great to see. Cooper White is coming through to join Mitch Nevitt and Toby Conway, of course. So Geelong have picked him up. Give us a bit of a rundown into his game style.
Yeah, so obviously a midfielder, really good with kicking penetration, really good with stoppage bursts. Could maybe work on a bit of consistency, but overall a really good player and a really good pickup for Geelong. Boys, what do you think?
Yeah, I like his flair. I think he's got that turn of speed, a little bit of sort of pizzazz in midfield. He can really burst out of a stoppage and catch the eye that way. So, and a pretty handy pick who I guess it's a bit of a why not pick. You've got a late selection. You can go local. You know he's not going anywhere. And potentially you could have a really handy future midfielder that has a point of difference about him. So he's not just that sort of inside crabby midfielder who just wins a lot of ball. He's got a point of difference. He's got a bit of flair. So he should catch the eye. And going forward, he's really penetrative. Obviously has that left foot kick as well. So, a little bit about Cooper White and a pretty handy selection late on.
Okay, so with pick 84, Melbourne have selected Taj Wowoden. So we had a feeling they would have to use their main draft pick on him. So East Fremantle product, really exciting. There was talk that he'd go a lot higher. This is at pick 84, so great work by Melbourne to get him on. Obviously, sort of be their last list spot. Guys, Taj Wowoden, what do you reckon?
Yeah, really versatile and athletic prospect. And for a father-son pick and how late he has gone, it's a very good free hit for Melbourne to get. And again, we spoke about sort of Blake Howes bringing that athleticism to their team. It's the same thing that Taj is going to be able to bring in. He'll bring a bit more versatility as well. He's a good kick. He's sort of just a natural footballer's footballer.
Sweet. So with Gold Coast, they have Mac Andrew and Charlie Constable. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, pretty quick haul in and out. Obviously, we thought that pick 3, which ended up being pick 5, was going to be their lone selection. They had a couple of, relistings to do. Hugh Greenwood, was going to be one of them. That fell to pieces. So they got Charlie Constable, which is a good replacement as well. Obviously, Mac Andrew, the tall that they got first up, is great selection. High upside, could be anything. He's unbelievably athletic. So we like how he leaps at the ball, how he can mark overhead. We've seen him in the ruck jump on Sam Darcy's throat, and up forward he has a bit of potential. He uses the ball well. There's so much about him. Could speak about him for days. So two great players they've added in, a bit of ruck depth, and then obviously Charlie Constable, a ready-made midfielder.
All right, so there's only about 4 clubs left that we've got to speak about. We're going to move on to Sydney. So Angus Sheldrick was taken with 18, Matty Roberts with 34, Corey Warner with 40, and Lockie Rankin with 62. Guys, what do you reckon about that haul?
Yeah, well, they've obviously gone for their needs there. I mean, the midfield's something they definitely wanted to bolster. They lost George Hewitt. They've lost Jordan Dawson on the wings. So they've got some ready-made replacements already in Angus Sheldrick, who's a big body. Matty Roberts, who's played some senior football. Corey Warner also played a bit of senior football as well. But he might take a little bit more time to play on those wings when you've got guys like Errol Goulden and Braden Campbell as, those left-footer types. And Lockie Rankin a bit later on, I mean, you could consider that a bit of a steal. He's a very versatile player. I do wonder what role Sydney will want to play him in, but he can play forward, he can play back on the wing, he can even go for the midfield. He's still rather light-bodied, so that's probably why he might take a little bit more time, but he's got elite endurance. He can run all day. So, I mean, that's 4 really good selections for Sydney. They'll come away from the draft absolutely stoked, and I'm sure Chad will be stoked to see his brother come along for the ride.
Western Bulldogs have Sam Darcy, Arthur Jones, and Luke Cleary. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, there's a crop I like. Obviously, Sam Darcy was the obvious one. He was going to go at pick 2 with that bid from GWS, and really adds to their spine. So they've obviously got Jamari Ugle-Hagan, who was another Scotch and Oakley boy. Aaron Norden up forward as well. And then down back, they can add Sam Darcy potentially. He can roll through the ruck, but then also could play up forward. So he could be anything. Really balanced kind of player. And for his size, he's still growing out to 205 centimetres this year. There's so much potential with him. And then Arthur Jones, they get a guy who's got that work rate as a wingman. He's another sort of late developer who's really come on towards the end of the year. And he was really impressive in big games. So in Claremont's final series and also for his state against South Australia, he was fantastic, really dynamic on the wing, brought the ball forward and can work both ways. And then rounding out with Luke Cleary, they've got a guy who's had an extra year under his belt, 19-year-old, one of the more impressive ones in Victoria this year, and a really composed ball user coming out of defence. So he's an impressive player, and I think, yet another Sandringham Dragon to get off the board. They'd be really stoked with their crop this year too.
All right, just 2 clubs left. So Geelong picked up 3 locals in Toby Conway, Mitch Nevitt, and Cooper White. And they also picked up James Willis and Flynn Kroger. Guys, give us a rundown into that haul for the Cats.
Go for it, Declan.
Oh, all right. Well, thrown under the bus. Pretty good haul. And, Toby Conway, largely spoken about as the best pure ruck in the draft pool. And it's probably something that they need. They have a few developing ones on the list, but, those are sort of ruck forward types that you're not overly confident they're going to turn into number 1 rucks. Whereas Toby, you can hang your hat on that he's going to turn into a pretty good ruck and a number 1 ruck at that. And then Nevitt, to get that far, we thought that he'd probably get selected in the first round. So that's a really good one to pick up. And, it shows how the benefit of trading for that Bulldogs pick has worked out really well for him in picking up 2 locals. And I'll hand over to Ed here as the real expert of these later draft selections.
Yeah, so James Willis, he's one who, if he did get that full season, he probably would have, probably even pushed into that top 25 range. He's got a lot of speed. He's very dynamic. He's strong. He loves to tackle, got a good penetrating kick, and he's certainly one with, the athletic traits and the upside there as well. I mean, he could be a really good player as, a high half forward or even going through the midfield as well with his power and burst from the stoppages. And Kroger, he doesn't have that burst, but he's definitely a really strong midfielder who can, he's a good mark overhead. He's very clean around the ground. He's another one who could probably play off half back, wing and half forward. So they've got quite a few good options there, Geelong. I mean, that's a lot of really good young talent that they've brought into the list. I mean, it is an aging list. They've got a lot of older players. They're going to need to replace them at some point. And all of these players, you could say, could not even in the next maybe 2 to 3 years could already be playing some senior football.
Last but not least, we have West Coast, who have picked up Campbell Chesser, Brady Hoff, Rhett Bazzo, Jack Williams, and Greg Clark. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is another one that I think the club and fans will be really happy with. So they got their man Campbell Chesser, they're able to trade down to pick 14 with Port Adelaide there. They get him in, suits the need, obviously that outside class, but has the potential long-term to play inside as well. So he provides heaps of run and athleticism. And then Brady Hoff, obviously tonight they've gone all local. He's one who has that dynamism again, so he can play a lot of positions. He's incredibly versatile, has good sort of decision making going forward, so that's really important. They add another sort of outside piece to the puzzle. Rhett Bazzo is the key defender. You can play at both ends, but we love his intercept marking. He reads the play so well. Just floats across, gets up there and can pluck balls out. And that's his game. He's not the sort of, defensive wrestler who's going to shut down those big gorilla key forwards. So he's a nice addition. Jack Williams at the other end. He's a really nice aerial player too. So he can play through the ruck and forward. So that they're really sort of settling those bookends nicely. And Greg Clark, add a ready-made sort of player to the midfield, get that depth going, and I think they're going to be really happy that they've ticked a lot of boxes here West Coast, and they've got a lot of players that they know aren't going to go anywhere. Even outside the local picks, Campbell Chesser, we know he said there's no team in Albury, so he was going to have to play away from home. He spent 4 years boarding at Melbourne Grammar. Fantastic haul for the West Coast Eagles.
Thanks very much, guys. Now, we're going to wrap up shortly, but before we do, let's just quickly, I'll run through a few names of those who didn't get on a list. So perhaps we're looking to the rookie draft, just sort of alphabetical order. Obviously, Anthony Caminiti, we've sort of spoken about. Josh Brown was another one who, at East Freo didn't make it on. Yusuf Dib, the Collingwood NGA. Cade Dittmar, Morgan Ferris, Cooper Hamilton, Austin Harris. Obviously, there's a couple of AFL Academy members through that. Charlie Molan, possibly one of the surprise players not getting on. Corey Preston, again, hasn't got on. Lewis Rayson. You've got Hamish Sinnott's another possibility. A few more Tasmanians in Baker Smith and Will Splann. Hugh Stagg. There's Paddy Voss, Bryce Watson, Carl Warner, Luca Whitelam. The list sort of goes on, obviously. We've got quite a few there, but guys, who do you think was the most unlucky, I should say, not to make it on tonight, and who might be early on in the rookie draft?
I mean, I was hoping that Luke Nankervis would have got a bit of a plug there. I mean, he's one who we certainly like here in this room. He's got quite a lot of upside. He was another one, like the Sandy Dragons, they've had a good haul this year, and he's certainly one I'll be looking for in that range for the rookie draft. I mean, he could also go again next year and maybe even get some time as an on-baller. I mean, he's definitely looked really classy on a half-forward flank, but he's definitely got some, those tricks, his clean hands and his movement at stoppages. I mean, he could be anything. I mean, as they've shown with Luke Cleary getting taken and Max Heath, who got taken in the mid-season draft, there are some strong players out of the Sandringham Dragons. Another one, Lockie Carrigan, who missed out this year, who was one who got a combine invite last year. He's tall, he's about 191 centimetre midfielder who can play wing or half forward as well. He's another one who could come back next year and really make a good fist of it.
Yeah, and he'll be a 20-year-old next year as well, so that could be a really good use of that rule. Obviously, I'm not sure if that's going to happen given it's back to 18-year-old, but there are a few players who have missed out, particularly NAB leaguers who haven't played a lot of footy, that would be perfect for that sort of 19-year-old rule. So Ballantyne's there, Caminiti would be ideal. I think Charlie Mullen will probably go in the rookie draft just because he's so reliable. Could even play VFL level next year. Corey Preston might go in the rookie draft as well. But yeah, Hamish Sinnott, he's pretty raw still. He's got a lot of sort of filling out to do. So there are a lot of types there who will probably filter in or stay in the system, but filter into the VFL as well. I look at a guy like Carl Warner. He's got a lot of upside, can play a couple of positions. He's already on Richmond's VFL list. So there's a lot there, and a few more state leaguers, even interstate, that might get a bit of attention. A couple of Glenelg boys on our list here as well, Declan.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say on Caminiti, he's the type of player that I think the rookie draft is made for. That type of player with a lot of good traits that maybe hasn't got the exposure or might have a few things to work on that a club might not want to make that 2-year commitment for. But, with a 1-year contract could really impress just at training and with, their own dedication to how they go about it. I think that Cade Dittmar as well, a reliable big inside midfielder. He might get looked at with how in vogue that those types of players are as well. And Yusuf Dib, I just think that his consistency and versatility throughout the year should, be rewarded with a spot on a rookie list at the very least.
Just a question, guys, just to wrap it all up. Which team's draft order did you like the most?
Well, personally, I think North Melbourne, I mean, how can they lose taking Horn Francis and getting someone of the calibre of Goda that much later? But they've also been able to address some needs and some really nice young talent in Curtis and Miller Bergman later on. I mean, every single player that North picked up are players that I really, really like. And in terms of, sliders, I mean, Collingwood have come out absolutely laughing with Draper and Murley. I mean, they're two superb talents out of South Australia. I mean, Richmond as well. I mean, you're getting Tyler Sonsie that late. I'm a big, big fan of Judson Clark and hope he would have gone earlier. I mean, Adelaide, they've done really well with some of their Victorian prospects. I wouldn't say, though, that a lot of clubs would be too disappointed with their draft hauls. I mean, every club goes in with certain players on their board that they want to pick, and I'm sure most supporters of each club should really take note that they've done what they needed for their own list. It may not be the player that you liked as the best player on the board, but these are the players that are the best fit for your footy club and that environment they've got to play in.
I was going to say, it's the best time of year because everyone's a winner immediately after the draft. So every supporter and every recruiter would be happy with their haul. Looking at that list, I still think Fremantle just able to get Matthew Johnson in the second round, big winners. I like what Hawthorn have been able to do with their picks as well. But again, every club has a couple of prospects to really like and, should give them some hope of, improvement in the future.
I think the West Australian clubs will be massive winners because they've gone local. Obviously, West Coast have one who's from Victoria, but, these are kids who have played consistently throughout a whole year, and that's very rare in the last couple of seasons. So they've been able to get full seasons of football under their belt. Obviously, the South Australians have done so as well, but they've been pretty much uninterrupted, this year. And I think that's going to really show, in the next few years as they develop, having that sort of experience, just that maturation under their belt. I think that those two clubs, Fremantle and West Coast, will be massive, massive winners out of this year's crop.
Yeah, I can't really recall so many West Australian prospects actually going into the main draft as well. I mean, a lot of West Australians always feel that, they're getting a little bit hard done by, the players that aren't getting picked up. And, well, you can't complain this year because there are so many and deserving as well. Yeah. And there's even a few that haven't been taken that you could really make a case for, like a Cade Dittmar or Bryce Watson. I mean, it's been very, very good year for the West Australian clubs, that's for sure.
Thanks very much for joining us tonight. That's all. Thanks very much to the draft experts in there, Michael Alvaro, Ed Pascoe and Declan Reeve. It's been a fantastic night. Plenty of young men have realised their dreams. There's still plenty on the board. We've still got a rookie draft and a pre-season draft, of course, too. There's not many there. It has been great. Hopefully you enjoyed your team's haul and the players you managed to get. And if not, perhaps there's some more still to come. So stay tuned at Rookie Me Central. Grace, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So that pretty much wraps it up. Make sure you download our 2021 AFL Draft Guide from the website and subscribe for plenty more great content. Just head to central.rookieme.com/AFL for all that information. And be sure to be following our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube pages because we're going to have plenty of cool content coming up in the form of not only articles, but also plenty of videos too. So if you like what you watch, you can always go back and watch it again. And we'll have plenty more to come. So thanks very much for joining us tonight. And until next time, that's Peter Williams signing out. Thanks very much.